Okay, it's being live streamed now. Good to
Aina
go.
mana, ina reo, ina ro, ragatira mā. Tina koutou katoa, ina mai, pare mai. Ko Rachel Rees toko ingoa, ko Oti Koromatua whakatū. Welcome to everyone on Zoom. And here we are in COVID level 4 in August. Not something that I think any of us wanted, but I think we all understand why New Zealand needs to be working through our COVID levels at this point in time. So I want to start today with karakia, and then I have a few words just to say and reflect on, acknowledge our community. So starting today with karakia. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa po ngā mutu moana, kia huarahi mā tātou I te ranga nei, aroha atu, aroha mai, tātou ia tātou katoa, hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora, welcome. It's nice to see you all here. Our Zoom is set up really well this morning, so thank you very much to our governance advisors for their support in getting the meeting ready today. We have run through the procedures for Zoom, but if anyone's got any concerns, please just signal in the chat box so we can provide support, or if you have problems with technology. We will be taking regular breaks today, so we're going to take do 45 minutes and then we'll just have a little break and then come back. And we're aiming to have the meeting completed today in around 2 to 2.5 hours, and that should be a reasonable amount of time. It's quite a long time on Zoom, so that will be how we approach today. Before we start public forum today, because I don't have any apologies and interests, I'll leave you to attend to that as necessary as we go. I just want to acknowledge that this is a challenging time both for New Zealand with the return of community cases with COVID-19. I want to acknowledge the outstanding work of all of our people working in the health sector, our police, all of our community organisations, the emergency management team, both the councillors in the region, our iwi, everybody, including the public who are doing their part to keep us safe. And what an amazing outcome we have at the moment with the Trafalgar Centre being made available for vaccination, and our region leading New Zealand in vaccination rates. So that is a huge positive for us. I also want to acknowledge that for New Zealand, this is a very difficult time for our Kiwi Afghanis who are having to confront a very, very challenging situation in Afghanistan. And I just want to share our thoughts today with our Afghani Kiwis and say that we are here in support. We understand how challenging this is. And I want to also acknowledge the New Zealand Defence Forces who are currently overseas supporting in Afghanistan, and I want to thank them for their service, as well as thanking all of those who have served in Afghanistan in the past. And I particularly acknowledge Councillor McGurk for your service. I know for those who have served, those who are serving, that there are long-standing connections that are built with the Afghani people, and you will still have friends in Afghanistan and friends here that you have made who you will be thinking of at this time. So for all of us, I just think it's a time to reflect on, yes, in New Zealand, we are in a challenging situation with COVID, but our hearts are very much with the people of Afghanistan at this time. And we wish you every blessing. And I say to you, Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you. I think that's on that note, we'll start the meeting today with a public forum, and I'll invite Lindsay Hay and Henry Hudson to join the meeting. I'm just being let into our Zoom. Welcome, Henry. And I'm just waiting for Lindsay. And Elaine, if he's all rubbing, he's already in, then you can help me out with that. Here we come. Good morning, Lindsay. Good morning, Henry. Hopefully you can hear me okay. I'll just check that the sound's working. Henry, I can see you're off mute. Are you able to hear me? Perhaps not. Lindsay, are you able to hear me? I'll ask you to come off mute and then see if you can hear us. Lindsay, that's it.
Is that better?
That's much better, Lindsay. Thank you very much. Now, Lindsay, I think you can hear me, but I'm not sure that Henry can hear me at the moment.
Well, I'll hang about until, something happens. My stage lighting's no good.
No, we're ready to go, but I'm just thinking that Henry may not be able to hear us. So I'll just take a moment.
Yeah, Robin, sure. Yep.
Robin, are you able to assist Henry at this point?
Yes, I'm trying to contact him through chat. That's about all I can do to see if he can turn his audio on his computer, perhaps.
All right, we'll just give a couple more moments to see if Henry can get that audio working, and if not, Lindsay, we'll get underway.
Yeah, just let me know, and I'll do what I'm told to do. The picture you've got, I'm using an old laptop because the new modern one didn't want to know anything about Zoom. So this is a 10-year-old one, so the picture quality is probably not the greatest. I look like I'm sitting in the dark, but it's really the words that matter, I suppose.
It's absolutely fine, Lindsay. Lindsay, I'll just get you to wait there for a moment. I'll just deal with a couple of other things while we're seeing if we can connect Henry. And the Deputy Mayor's just reminded me, in terms of the order of business today, we're going to swap the reports around. So the spatial plan report will come before the Kāinga Ora property report. And the Mayor's report will come before both of them. So they'll stay in the same spot.
There's Henry.
Through the chair, Henry says the sound is on, but nothing is coming through.
All right, so I think we're going to have to commence. Lindsay, are you able to manage this running through the slides?
Yep, I can go for it now if you wish.
Absolutely. All right, thank you.
Okay. Look, thanks, Madam Mayor and councillors, for allowing me this opportunity. Hang on, that's Henry's stuff.
Can anybody hear me? Because I'm not getting any sound back.
Henry, can you hear me now? No, okay. I think we've got a technical problem. Now, look, what I could do, Lindsay, if you like, is that we can defer this. I can let you go offline.
We can.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry, could you give me the thumbs up if you can hear me, please? Thank you, because there's no sound from this end. So basically, in this very brief period that I have, I'd just like to say there's a huge amount of detail that we need to go through before this incredibly important decision, probably the biggest decision the council ever has to make, is made. There are many aspects to this problem, starting with how much information that we actually have to make the decision on. And part of the issue is that we haven't had an update on the website as to what the actual things like asset values are. And that's why there's quite a difference between what Neville has said perhaps and what I've said about values. I would like to just go through and say very much in brief that there's definitely a need across the country to do something about water. What we're actually looking at for the Three Waters proposal actually isn't that particularly relevant to Nelson, and some of the issues that we have nationally are not going to be addressed by Three Waters, specifically, farm effluent, for example, independent private sewage treatment facilities leaking into the Ashburton lakes, poor water quality because of a dead possum on the roof water tank. None of those things are within the gambit of this here whatsoever. The big issue to me is things like we have got a hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of assets, and that the reality is that we're going to get a few cents on the dollar for those assets as a support package. We'd be far better off not taking the support package because of the revenue we generate from our income that we already have from the Three Waters. We could make up the support package within a couple of years without a problem. We could pay off our debt within a few years without the Three Waters at all. There's issues of ownership and how we actually have a place at the table. And the problem with dealing with 20 odd other councils and a large number of iwis are that we're going to have agreement to actually do things. We're in a really good place in terms of our infrastructure currently. It's going to be very, very hard to say, oh, forget about some of these small towns, villages, all the issues that we have around the rest of our region that extends from the Chatham Islands right up the east coast through Wellington. To have a place at the table is going to be, I'd say, quite close to impossible because our asset values don't add up to the top 2 or 3 people ahead of us in the queue. And how, for example, our iwi is going to have a place with the hundreds of other iwi up and down the coast, that's going to be another very difficult issue. So the governance is a very difficult thing. In terms of things like the efficiencies, I have quite a bit of information on efficiencies. And, you can't reduce costs unless you reduce services or you reduce staff or you grossly increase efficiencies. And if we go through some of the modelling exercise that we have, you have to have a vast organisation in order to increase efficiencies. And none of our places within the region that we're dealing with, Entity C, are in that scale where they've actually obtained efficiencies in the England, Wales and Scottish models. So the idea that we can actually add another layer of bureaucracy on top of our existing water infrastructure while we retain all our own staff and we're going to suddenly gain efficiencies or lower costs actually is not possible. I think the main point to me at the end of the day is how will we ever be able to say we need to do some improvements? We've already got all these things in the pipeline. I think that Nelson is very well positioned to actually tick all the boxes as to what we have to accomplish under all the proposed reforms. So there is no real benefit to us. It's effectively the same thing as trading in a lot of our asset values for no apparent gain and in fact some quite significant losses. And in terms of loss of income and loss of control. I think that in terms of conclusions, there is substantial government support that's required for Three Waters across the country, but not necessarily for the region. And we could be a lot more targeted if you actually want to address real issues. For example, Havelock, the tragedy of Havelock could be solved simply by a ring fence around the water supply where the contaminated water was dripping into the well. We don't need a huge bureaucracy and a loss of our control locally to address issues like that. Government could be far more targeted, and that's what I would prefer to see, is a far more targeted approach. It's going to be really difficult to have responsiveness to our needs. It's going to be very, very difficult to coordinate things such as a road repair in one of our streets and doing some drainage work at the same time. So we're going to lose efficiencies like that. And if we take the transit model that's occurred in New Zealand now regionally and across the South Island, for example, there's got a real problem is going to be the local capacity, local knowledge to actually undertake works when they finally come up onto the agenda may well be gone by the time we get round to actually saying, yes, we're going to fund these initiatives locally. This is, as I said, the biggest decision that council will ever have to make, in my opinion. And I think that we need to have a lot more information to make an informed decision, and I think the public has to be highly involved in this process. And I'm sorry that I cannot actually hear anything from your end, so I'm sort of dead in the water for answering stuff. But thank you very much for your time. And I request that you please read what I've written. I've put a fair amount of thought into this, and I think that we need to consider each of those points.
Henry, thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'm really sorry you can't hear us, but you'll be able to go back and watch the YouTube recording of this. So, Lindsay, I'll come across to you. Do you want to add anything, Lindsay?
Yeah, I'm ready to go. Are you hearing me okay?
We're hearing you fine.
Right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillors, for giving us the time to speak on this very important subject. We, the people of Nelson, need to express our concerns with the Three Waters proposal. I'll start with the known facts as I can find them. In the council's annual accounts to 2020 show gross revenue from water of $12 million and after expenses 4.5 million of net income. The accounts grade our drinking water is good, stormwater and waste also good, and the long-term plan takes care of capex because the sewage lines aren't the flashiest, but it's fine according to your accounts, and I've got nothing else to go on. The loss of $4.5 million income will require a 5% rate increase to cover the shortfall. Whilst the government is offering us all sorts of incentives, I can't even read my own writing here, the precise amount from government is not clear. It's been reported from 11 million to 25 million. In other words, 5 years loss of income, but the compensation won't be paid till 2024, 3 years wait, which means we're $15 million shortfall. How will that deficit be covered? 15% rate increase? That'll go down like a cup of cold sick. Not only that, we will have lost our cost of water will increase, so it's a double whammy. I do not understand why a third party receives 50% of our water assets, and they also have the right of veto. Having control, they have effective ownership and can sell to whoever they wish at any time. It is not clear what the benefit is accruing to the Nelson ratepayers in giving away 100% of the asset for 50% shareholding. What's in it for us? Nelson will not have direct representation on the new entity. The representation on the area 4 is pro rata the asset value, and our asset value will be 6% of it. Dr. Henry might have talked about that, but we will therefore have no real power to do anything. At present, we have 100% control. All decisions are made in the interest of Nelson ratepayers, and we have complete control of our water asset. We will never receive a dividend that is even close to the $4.5 million we've lost. Working on the government's lowest estimate of capital required of 120 million, the interest alone, forgetting principal, is the order of 3.6 billion per annum. And the reported employment of 9,000 staff can hardly provide efficiency. So what are the advantages will Three Waters bring to the Nelson ratepayer? Please tell us. It's complete nonsense to say our water will cost $5,000 per household in the future, as we have already got the assets in place. Now, show us the working papers. Because Nelson has spent wisely in the past, we've got the Maitai Dam and the Tantra G water treatment. we will be subsidising those less endowed with water quality. That's their problem, not ours. If the assets were, this is the water assets, were a commercial investment property producing an income of 4.5 million, the asset value would be in the order of 100 million. Now, I'm lost to see the benefit of giving away 50 million of value belonging to the taxpayer. The actual book value is order of 996 million, but that's an accumulated cost over 150 years and may not represent the assets that are actually sitting there right now.
Lindsay, it's Mayor Rachel here, just letting you know that that's the 10 minutes time.
Yeah, I've got about 2 minutes to go, well, a minute and a half.
All right, well, look, if you can make it
I'll
a
go
minute
quick.
and a half, I'll leave you to do that. You put a lot of work into your presentation and it's helpful for us when we have to work through the next steps with you.
Can I carry on, please?
Yes, you can. Yes.
Well, thank you. I'd like the council to demonstrate the agreed NCC values of integrity and stewardship being applied. The Local Bodies Act talks about good governance, and it's very hard to see that being demonstrated here, and there is clauses within there on providing water to your citizens. Councillors, you were elected by the people of Nelson. You are paid by the people of Nelson. Your sole responsibility is to Nelson. The issues in other regions of no concern to Nelson councillors. This issue was not on the table at the last elections, the current council do not have a mandate to make a decision on our behalf. We need a binding referendum on the Three Waters concept. Let the people speak. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Lindsay, and thank you, Henry. I'm sorry, Henry, you can't hear me. Look, I will come to this a little bit later in the Mayor's report because we're going to have some briefings on Three Waters. What I can say to you is that I appreciate the work you've done, and you're correct. There does need to be more information available, and that
absolutely.
And that is definitely the message that is being communicated to the Department of Internal Affairs around the proposal. There is more information that has arrived for council to look at, and we'll be having some working through with the councillors on some of that process over the coming weeks. So then this period to the end of September is to look at that information. No decision is being asked of council in that period. And I would just clarify for today while you're here, but you can come back and listen to the Mayor's report later if you want to, that there is no, compensation that Henry referred to before is not compensation for water assets. It is a contribution to the future of the local government. It's certainly not compensation for assets, it's additional funding. So we'll talk through the components of that. I can see if you, from a public perspective, if you've only had very limited cartoon-like advertisements presented to you, then it's very difficult to get the information that you need. And we have certainly been communicating that back to the government's representatives. But we'll come to a bit more of this as we get to the Mayor's report later on. Thank you very much. We're well over time. So I'm going to wrap up public forum now, and conscious that Henry can't answer questions either. So Lindsay, thank you for joining us, and we'll look forward to meeting you, catching up with you, hopefully in person, for some to have some discussions around this in the next few weeks. If not, it might have to be on Zoom again. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, and thank you for your time and your consideration of the points raised by myself and with Dr. Henry. I'm just a regular Joe Blow out there on the street, and everyone I talk to has issues with this thing, and we need answers. What's in it for us? Absolutely.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the time. Bye.
No problem. All right, that's the conclusion of public forum. I'm just checking our time to see if we're ready for a break yet. I don't believe we are, so I will just now move across to the next item on the agenda, which will just take me a little moment to change screens. So think next up we have the Mayor's report. Am I correct in that, Elaine? I'm afraid I haven't got I was looking for the documents to come.
Yes, yeah, through the Mayor, you are correct, yes.
All right, so I still haven't got an email with my council documents in it. So if one of the GAs will be able to do that, it just makes it a little bit easier if I've got both agendas and the spatial plan attachment in an email so that I can work off my 3 little screens. That'd be great. So we'll take the Mayor's report as read. The only additions that I would say to the Mayor's report today are just in relation to Three Waters discussion. And I'm in terms of some of the matters that have been raised today, I think some of the really important things to understand with the proposal is this period until the end of September is to allow elected members across New Zealand the opportunity to ask questions, to understand the information that is there. More information on Nelson was provided to the Chief Financial Officer in terms of the analysis last Monday, but obviously with lockdown coming straight in, we haven't got the analysis of that yet, but that is all being prepared for you. I would say to some of the comments today that obviously the financial component is not, as I said, a payment for assets. It's absolutely not intended for that, and that was made very clear by both Grant Robertson, the Minister of Finance, and Minister Mahuta. I also just note that the companies remain in ownership of councils, and that's also important to understand. So the companies, if they were to be established, all councils will be named as owners. The comments around rates increases are not accurate, and certainly the revenue streams and the assets the intention is for those to transfer along with the debt and the future investment that is going to be required to respond to the freshwater initiatives, to climate change and all of the other matters that we've had some discussion about. So the analysis that we would have is a comment around 5% rate rises because the revenue streams gone is quite inaccurate. In fact, there's nothing at all that would indicate rates rises as a result of that. In fact, it is from a financial position slightly better for us in that regard. But what I don't want to spend a lot of time on that today because there are a whole lot of elements that we need to run through with you, and it'll be more than one session. Just costs to Pat because we've also had some discussions about setting up to help Lindsay and Henry, because quite rightly they're saying they do want to know more, and I think that's great that we've got an engaged community. So we're just looking at some mechanisms to support that sharing of information. So Pat, I'll just ask you to make a few comments.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we've got a workshop with councillors this coming Tuesday where we're bringing Jason Krupp from Local Government New Zealand and Dan Bonifant, one of the directors of Morrison Low, down to talk through the national case for change and Morrison Low at the moment doing a review of our dashboard data just to confirm its reliability. Nikki Harrison at the same workshop will be talking about the financial implications for Nelson City Council, looking at that dashboard and what our debt and revenue ratios would look like before and after a transfer of assets. Then we have 2 public meetings, one on Monday the 6th of September in the Trafalgar Centre and the Thursday the 9th of September in Green Meadows. Obviously those dates are going to be subject to us being reasonably well out of lockdown. We may have to look at pushing those back. If the councillors feel they need another workshop, then we'll schedule that probably the week after that. And then we have a formal report coming to the council on the 23rd of September. That's very much based on a standard report that Taitura, the Society of Local Government Managers, has prepared for all councils. We'll be inserting our data into that. That'll be a public meeting, but the recommendation at the end of that report is that the information be noted. There's not going to be any decision about transferring assets, yes or no, in the next couple of months. That's certainly not the intention. This is about getting the information to our elected representatives and understanding any questions and concerns they may have, and passing those back to DIA before the 1st of October. So that's the plan at the moment, Madam Mayor. As I said, lockdown may mean we have to shift some of our dates back a little bit, so we give the public as much a chance as possible. But we will be running through the national case for change and how Nelson will be affected by those proposals. But I can say that a lot of information that's been circulated at the moment is not correct, and there is the steering committee has been providing some very direct feedback to DIA that their communications campaign needs to be far more informative than has been up until now.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you. I'll just open for some questions. I've got Councillor Edgar, Councillor Laurie, Councillor McGurk and Councillor Courtney.
Thank you. Firstly, I'm not sure if I've got any of those dates in my diary as yet. I assume they'll be coming through. I'm just wondering if the information coming forward is also going to include the role of Te Mata Arawai and the regulatory impacts and associated costs of the water services bill, because I think you can't have a Three Waters discussion without understanding the role of Te Mata Arawai and what that also means, because, you know, there's it could change or it could stay the same discussion, and with Te Mata Arawai and the water services bill, it is very much not going to stay the same. So is more information on that going to come forward both to us and to the public?
Thanks, Pat. Good advice.
Yes, you're absolutely correct. The status quo, business as usual, is not going to continue, and it is something we will be talking about more. But the establishment of Te Mata Arawai and the implementation of the National Policy Statement on Freshwater Management means that the world we're working in today is going to look dramatically different to the world that we'll be operating in 10 years' time. And that's what a lot of the WICS data has is based on. And I think that's what a lot of people are not understanding. And it's not just water supply. This is water, wastewater, and stormwater. And the NPS on freshwater management is going to have a serious impact on wastewater and stormwater. Can I just say that if we get deep into this topic today, we'll be here for 3 hours.
We will.
And that's why we've got a workshop scheduled next next Tuesday, and we'll be so much better prepared and be able to provide the information in a reasonably coherent and logical way. So
thanks, thank you, Pat. Yes, I absolutely agree with that. So we'll take brief questions on the Mayor's report in total. Councillor Laurie.
Kia ora, everyone. Thank you. I think our public forum guests hit the nail on the head when they asked what's in it for us, and that is the question Nelsonians are asking. And I think it would be very helpful if those ideas could get out the door as fast as possible, because nature hates a vacuum, and at the moment people don't have that information. I do have one quick question about the workshop next week. Given the amount of interest in the topic, given its importance, could we please have it live streamed?
I'd support that request.
I'm probably not keen to do that for the first one, because I want to run through. There's going to be just a lot of information to run through. But what I think we will do is actually have a few goes at this so that we can do that in a really efficient way for the public. So one of the things that the feedback I've had from some of the live streaming that's been presented from LG&Z is that it's too long and you have to wait too long to get to the bits that you want to know. So I want to do an edited sort of presentation where it's the key issues from a public perspective. So we'll get that organised, but not for that one. So we can make it as user-friendly as possible, which Matt, I think, is just reinforcing what you've just been talking about. Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, a couple of quick questions. I'm just wondering, is 2 public meetings going to be enough? I see that they're scheduled for only 2 hours, 2 of them for 2 hours, and I think you know, the feedback would be is probably a lot more material is going to have to be covered.
I
With that,
think
and also whether there's some kind of sort of publication, whether it's something out in the Nelson Mail or our Nelson that can go out, sort of just a summary of the issues.
yes, there will be quite a range of ways of presenting information, which one of them just talked about is I think it's actually worthwhile us putting together something that you can watch. So you've got the bits of information, so we need to get that organised so people can watch that whenever they want to, and also through our Nelson. So there'll be a range of ways of doing this. But again, I just reinforce that this period there's no decision point at the end of this. So this isn't a decision point. If the government decided, their intent, and they've signalled their intention that, and we've heard our public forum speakers say, look, there does need to be change, because we know the status quo is not viable. Then there will be legislation drafted. There's likely to be discussion documents that will go through a full select committee process, and that'll be what will follow. So we'll certainly be looking to get good information available so people can understand, because there's a strong interest. But we'll work it through several medium in that process, Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, just the other subsequent question, is there any thought or is there any development about the economic regulator? I know that we've got Wix, which is the economic regulator in Scotland, which has done the work, but Scottish Water is the service delivery. Has there been any more thought about how that might be packaged and presented to the public?
Yes, there has been, and there's also been thought and consideration for consumer protection, two factors that don't exist currently in our system, and seem to be certainly a good process for managing water. So currently we have no economic regulator. Councils can actually pretty much charge. There's no controls over that, and the same for around both consumer protection, so from effectiveness and efficiency, and consumer protection. So that information is certainly being developed and worked on, and I expect that to come forward as well, Councillor McGurk.
Okay.
I'll just go to Pat. He might like to add something to that one.
And in Scotland, it's that economic regulator, that's Wix. That's the data that you're seeing. They were the ones who drove the cost efficiencies in Scotland. They basically conveyed to the companies, look, you're doing the same service as other major companies in the UK and the EU. You're more expensive. We expect to see price efficiencies. And they set efficiency targets, and that's what drove the efficiencies and the cost savings that are expected of these major New Zealand companies.
Thank you. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Rachel, and thank you, Pat, for your presentation. It was very helpful today, and I really appreciated it. Picking up on Councillor McGurk's point, and I just wanted an entry into this, we have to do a much better job than central government with our engagement with our people over this issue. We really do. And I would like to add something to Councillor McGurk's thinking, and that is drop-in sessions. And an acknowledgement that not everyone gets the weekly or the Nelson Mail. And so therefore, not only drop-in sessions we should consider, but also mail-outs to residents. Once they've got a certain amount of information, or as much as we think is required, that we get into some mail out to them and get their views back on it. Because as Lindsay said, this is a big decision. So we've got to do a much, much better job here locally. We owe it to our people to do that. And I just want an undertaking from you, Madam Mayor, and our Chief Executive, that you're out to do the best job you can in communicating this proposal to the Nelson community.
Councillor Courtney, there are two things in responding to that. I think the first is that one thing I know is that if the Chief Executive starts communicating things to the public before he communicates it to you as elected members, it doesn't go down very well. So number one is you as elected members need that information. Some arrived literally the night of lockdown, and so we are getting ready to make sure you've got that information in front of you. I think that's the most important thing here, and so absolutely making sure that will happen. And the second thing is that I'm very clear that my role is as a mayor in local government is not to be the proponent of government policy. My role in local government is to look at the government policy, to analyse the policy, to test the policy, to provide feedback on what I think works and doesn't work. And so we just need to make that distinction. So our role is to do that. Like, we are not here to be the government's agent to promote policy. That's not our role. And so that's why we need to make sure that all of you as elected members have good quality information where you can test and probe and give your feedback to the government about what you think works and doesn't work. And I know that you'll do that very well. Thank you, Councillor Courtney.
Thank you. Can I just indulge by saying, yes, I accept all of that, but we do have a duty to put it into words in our community that our people understand. And I do understand we don't want to be a mouthpiece for the government. We must not be seen as a mouthpiece, but we also must not be seen as a puppet for the government either, or sitting mute when we're in the process of negotiating such a big transaction, such a big proposition, that we sit mute or seen acting in puppet-like manner. So without being discourteous, of course, I understand that the CE doesn't play a role in this. I was really meaning that the council, our council, needs to give consideration and doing a much better job in communicating than central government has.
Yes, there's no puppet role here for local government. Local government is here to independently assess what they think is right for communities. Now, very quickly to Councillor Noonan, and this is the whole mayor's report, and we're now at our 45-minute break and over it, so we're wrapping this one up and then having a break. Last couple, Councillor Noonan's disappeared.
Oh, have I?
Oh,
No, am I here?
Are you ready to ask a question?
Hello? I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I haven't disappeared.
No, just your hand had disappeared.
Okay, you gave me a panic in a moment. A couple of things. Look, I just want to support the public meetings and the option to do that and the opportunity, because we've obviously been communicated on this topic. So I'm looking forward to those public meetings, and I think that will be. I think we've got a lot of questions that need to be answered. So thank you for that opportunity. I just wanted to refer to the Mayor's report in the governance policy statement for housing and urban development, and I was reading that last night, and I noticed that there were quite a few questions in the consultation document that I can't see that we've done any response to, and I'm just questioning whether we have done more than just the letter to say we should be included. Have we given any feedback on the questions that were asked in the document, or are we going to?
Thank you. I'll go to Ms. Barton, who can talk to why the submission is written as it is. Ms. Barton?
You need to speak. You're muted.
Sorry, I had disappeared for one moment. Councillor Noonan, can you just repeat what you said?
Right. Yes, of course. Look, I'm just referring to the government policy statement on the urban development discussion document that the government put out, and I noticed that they had quite a lot of questions throughout that document, and particularly on page 31, I've drawn that one out in particular, and I can't see that we've actually responded to any of the questions that were asked in the consultation document. Have we done that work, or are we intending to do that work?
No, I don't believe we have made any comments on those questions.
Is there any reason why? And are we going to?
Sorry, and Councillor Bywater has raised point 3.1 on page 6 of the Mayor's report. Sorry, can I come back to you on that? I just need to confirm something.
Yeah, no, I'm referring in particular to...
I just want to pause for a moment.
Yep.
So I'm just going to make a little reminder about the chat box.
Okay.
If you are wanting to engage in the substantive matters, which are the reports, please do not use the chat bot, okay? So we'll have to just work through, and if officers aren't clear of which part of the report an elected member is referring to, the elected member will raise that. So I just ask other elected members, please not to use the chat box for that purpose, or it gets very distracting for the officers.
So Shall I clarify something specific so it might help the officer to go and find? So on page 31 of the government policy statement document but there are several pages throughout, but that was one I just printed off just as there's a whole lot of questions there. I'm just wondering whether we're going to respond to those. That's it really.
So I will come back to you. I'll check.
So Claire, I think what Councillor Noonan's asking is this was a substantive piece of work from the government, which if you were to look at it, you'd think that Nelson City Council should have made a substantive multi-page response to it rather than a short letter. And I think for the elected members, they need to understand why that was the approach taken. Which, if you can, are you able to speak to that, or am I better to direct that to another officer?
I just want to run something past one of the other officers, and I will come back to you within the next couple of minutes if I can.
Fantastic, thank you. Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Chair Rees. Just get it clear from Pat and yourself. So we've got next week, we're having a workshop on the three waters, and then we're going out to the public with information on the 6th of September. Is that right?
Well, Councillor Skinner, one of the things that we're still going to work through is we can't have any public meetings in level 4 and level 3. So we're just, we're saying going out, and it's a matter of looking at those levels as we go through, and we'll have some mechanisms for doing that. But we want to produce some material that is specific to Nelson. We've got the fuller financial analysis that came through last Monday, and so we'll make sure that that is being presented in a way that is
presented to us as councillors prior to us going to public information. Is that right, Warren?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
And just my other disappointment and concern is that we are going out to the public with a statement that we've determined that this is what we're in favour of, and that the cases for change has been made, because we as councillors have not yet determined or indicated that we think that this is something that we are supportive of, or that we believe that the case for change has been made. So I'm a little concerned if we're going out to public with that intent.
Well, Councillor Skinner, I think the Chief Executive has run through sufficiently in briefings to talk about the fact that the status quo is not a viable option, that there need to be some changes. Councillor Eger referred to Te Atawai before, and the regulatory environment is changing.
For public's well-being and the mindset we're at, that may well be, yours are quite right, Pat and Rachel's, and for good reason, but we as councillors have not necessarily come to that conclusion ourselves. So I wouldn't like us to be going out to the public, as already been made a statement in the media, that this is a position we as council are supportive of, and that we believe this is a case for change, because we haven't come to that determination. We may yet come to that determination around the table, but I'm not comfortable that that's been presented on our behalf as a council as a whole.
I'll go to the Chief Executive. Ben?
So I think the words we used were the national case for change had been made. And I mean, Local Government New Zealand has been lobbying the government for some years to say that the situation with Three Waters is unsustainable. There needed to be a different financial model. So it's something that as an industry, we have been saying as well, that the costs that we're facing, especially for smaller communities, are unsustainable. The government is coming back with one solution, and one of the things that we want to discuss is what the effects might be for Nelson. But yeah, so I think the words were the national case for change.
That is not a position we as council have taken. That may have been a position that you others have seen at this stage, and that maybe we come to that consideration. But the statement wasn't on behalf of New Zealand; it was made a statement to be made in the public by you, Madam Mayor, respectfully, that council are supportive of a reform and believe the case of change has been made. Council has not. We as a council, elected councillors, have not come to that determination or quoted that or come to that decision. And so I'm still very disappointed and uncomfortable that we're going out in the 6th of September or 9th of September potentially to the public, saying that we as a council are supportive of this reform and believe the case of change has been made, that we have quite an influence on the public's perception of how we've got there, and whether they should tag along in what our belief is, because that is not a belief that we have made as a council or as individuals as of yet, and can't.
Well, Councillor,
Maybe after the workshop we can.
Well, Councillor Skinner, you and I will have to agree to disagree, because I'm confident that the Chief Executive has run through the without change scenarios with the elected members. And what I have said to the public is that we will, and I would expect this council, given we know from all of the evidence that we can see that the status quo is not the best option for any council in New Zealand, and that is generally a view that is, you know, I think it is very sound. It is certainly, and we've said it's not the best option for Nelson City Council, but what I've said to the public is, and I would expect this council to do, is to give any proposal due consideration and really look at it. And that's what this period is for now, for you to come and look at that proposal. Parts of the government's reform have been carved out as areas where we think further work is needed to be done. And they were some of the areas that were addressed by the presenters this morning. And we need to give feedback to the government on how we think those areas around governance and representation and making sure that local infrastructure is delivered. We need to give them feedback about what we think would work and what wouldn't work. So I'm going to close off the discussion now. As the Chief Executive said, we'll be here all day. He's got briefings, and I think once he runs through those, then you'll be able to form up your questions to assist with.
I'd sum up very briefly, then that should be a presented that is the PAT's view or the staff's view or the steering panel's view, but it's not as of yet the view or the democratically decided position of Nelson City Council.
Well, we'll have to agree to disagree on what the understanding was of the case for change. So that's we'll disagree on that today, if you like, Councillor Skinner, and we'll work our way through that when we come to the workshop. I don't form the same view as you do. Do I have any other questions on the Mayor's report? If not, I will move that we receive the Mayor's report. And actually, before I do that, can Ms. Barton come back with the answer to Councillor Noonan?
Yes, so through the Mayor, we recognise that the GPS on urban development was an incredibly important document, but we were stretched at the time, and that was as best that we could do in terms of actually providing input. It was it would be fair to say it was a last minute input, and that was as far as we could get in terms of the time that was available. We did provide some comment. We did coordinate a little bit with TDC. They again have similarly had last minute input to it.
Thank you. So Councillor Noonan, that's the answer. Staff resources.
Okay, but there was some.
And I have discussed that, if I just finish, I have discussed that in terms of our priorities as a council. And, you know, that's one of the things as we look through all of the policy and strategy work that needs to happen, we need to make sure that we're focusing our energies wherever we can on our council priorities.
So can I respond?
Yeah.
Well, just looking at the questions in that government policy statement, I think we should have probably had a look at that, because I think there are some questions in there rather important. Is there an opportunity for that to happen? Can the staff have a look retrospectively at those questions and see whether there's anything that should be covered off, because they are rather important questions?
Yeah, we can certainly look at the questions. I don't know whether that's going to be available in terms of providing input to government, but we can certainly look at them and, if possible, provide them commentary back.
Okay, I'd be interested to know what our thoughts are on some of those things, so thank you.
Which ones in particular, Councillor Noonan? Could you just identify?
Well, I mean, if you go to page 31 of the consultation document, it asks about whether we agree with the vision and whether the outcomes are correct and whether the proposed focus areas are right. I mean, and they're the fundamental parts of the actual document of where they think they're going to go, and we haven't given any response. I do think it's important. I don't know where we go from here, but I do think it's important.
All right, so what I'm going to do is, if we're going to give that direction to the officers through this meeting, because what's that saying is what you want is further work done on the submission to submit further feedback to the government. Is that what you're seeking? Because there wouldn't be any point doing the work if we weren't going to take an action step.
Well, I'd be interested to know, Madam Mayor, if other councillors agree, because I mean, it's no good if it's just me either. But it seems like a fundamental part of what they're doing, and if we haven't responded, then silence is a dangerous thing as well. So I just think that we need to be careful.
So what I'm trying to just ascertain for clarity is you would like a further submission to go to the government if that's possible on those key issues. All right. Okay. Now I need to get a sort of signal from the elected members as to whether this is going to be, you know, the thumbs up exercise, whether you think it is worth doing any more of that work. But before I get to that, I'll do a couple of questions from Councillor McGurk and Councillor Edgar, and then I'll try the thumbs up exercise. And in the meantime, Ms. Barton needs to really think about whether there is going to still be an avenue for giving that feedback. Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, just a quick question is, if we to do this work, what's going to drop off the table? I'm well aware of the workload that's in Ms. Barton's section, and I'm aware of some other priorities there as well. So what's going to miss out?
Ms. Barton?
So through the Mayor, the officer that would be involved in this would basically mean that the housing reserve work would potentially be postponed a little bit in terms of them being able to spend the time on it. So that's not ideal. And also the time period has closed for submissions, but we could put something through to the Minister if you're of a mind to do this additional work.
Thank you. Councillor Edgar.
Yeah, so my question was just about the time period, because I don't want any work done. I'm reticent to have housing reserve work delayed again, because there is no point doing the work for it to just go nowhere. And I'm just not sure about the value add. I'm trying to recall in the submission with a reference to, I'm sorry, I'm going to use the old acronym SOLGIM, also put in a submission, and whether our general approach aligned with current submissions going in. And if any points we raised have already been raised in other submissions, then I don't think we need to do the work either. So maybe Ms. Barton could respond to that.
Thank you.
So this is trying to recollect what was in the SOLGIM submission. We did look at it. There were some, they had a detailed submission, and I think also from memory, LGNZ might have made comment as well. So it would be a question of looking at what they have done and deciding whether that's we need to add anything or not. So it still requires a piece of work to be able to do that.
Thank you. Councillor Sanson.
Kia ora koutou. So my question is in relation to this submission, and also one that was referenced in the last Mayor's report, which was the 30-year infrastructure strategy. And I'm just wondering if those can be circulated to elected members. Like, I'm really keen that if things are going up to government, that elected members at least have eyes across what is going out from the organisation. We haven't, I'm just wondering, maybe Claire, Officer Barton, whether the 30-year infrastructure strategy submission can also be circulated.
I think Councillor Sanson, that was going to the infrastructure committee meeting. I think that was Councillor McGurk. Did you sign that one? The 30-year infrastructure strategy submission?
Just trying to think. Maybe Mr. Lavertis can help me with that one.
Maybe
it was a 30-year strategy, but that went out, oh God, several months back. I know that the AMPs are coming up.
It was in the last Mayor's report, and I did send through a question in advance of that meeting asking for it to be circulated, but that didn't happen, so I'm just following up.
All right, so we'll find out where that one is. They should be, if submissions are going up that are signed by, you know, elected members, or if they're referenced in reports, they should be reported to council attached to the report. So
certainly, you certainly have put something in for the the Productivity Commission for the infrastructure strategy that we're in.
Okay, so what we'll do is, can I leave that with the officers to attend to that? So as a matter of course, if we're making submissions to government, they need to be attached to a chair's or mayor's report. If they're signed off by elected members, they're substantive pieces of work like that. So because they need to be there on behalf of the council. So can we make sure that we do that? And if they haven't happened, we'll circulate it to elected members, but I also wanted to come back into the public record at the next meetings. So it's 2 action points from that one. Chief Executive.
Certainly, that's our preferred approach, Madam Mayor. Is that some of these submission, the government is moving very fast on a lot of things. These submission deadlines are tight. They don't tie in with a committee meeting or a council meeting. We try and work with the chair to draft a submission, but we always make it clear it's subject to council approval, and then try and bring it back to the committee or the council. If we send out a draft to every councillor, what we find is we get a wide range of comments that don't always agree, and then we find we're in a no-win situation. So certainly the approach you're outlining is our strong preference.
Thank you. All right.
And my request is really just that we can at least see what has gone up, so there's some kind of transparency around that. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Now I've got a hand up with Councillor Noonan again, and just remember to use the hand up function, please, if you're going to speak. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you. Look, I guess you're going to do the thumbs up, and I don't know where it's going to go, but I'd just like to indicate that if there is no more further work to be done on this, that I'm not going to support number 2 and the recommendations. If you could take it in 2 parts, if that is the outcome, that would be great.
All right. Okay, I just need a bit of a thumbs up sense if you want the officers to spend some more time on going back over the submission process policy document. So can I have a signal if you would like that work to be done, and somebody will do a bit of a count up. I don't think there is 1, 2, 3, 3. I don't think that is majority support. Councillor Noonan, if anyone's got a different view, they'll need to shout out now. Chief Executive.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, 2 councillors put up crosses. Was that a no or a yes? I think might be.
I think crosses are no's. I think I was going for like the really simple one this time. So this one, not that one, remember, not that one, that one. So
no, just to be clear, Madam Mayor, is that no, I'm not proposing that
no.
the officers
Okay,
do
okay.
any work.
I don't think I need to run that again. I think there was some support, but not a strong support for that one. So Councillor Noonan, lovely.
Thank you for checking. I just wondered, did everybody read it?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
Okay, because there's some fairly provocative stuff in there, so I'm surprised that we're not supporting a little bit more work on it. So I will not be supporting number 2. I just wanted to let you know that.
Okay, that's fine. Councillor Noonan, I can assure you that I, as it is a priority for councillor, I certainly was expecting a submission that was a bit more comprehensive, but I want to just acknowledge the fact that we have still been 1 staff member down in this team, and we still are down in that team, staff member down in that team. So what Ms. Barden is reflecting is the reality of what can humanly be done. So
I appreciate that, and thank you. It's just that I'm not comfortable with it, and that's
okay. All right, but I'm moving. We're receiving the Mayor's report. It's been seconded by Councillor Edgar. Yes, seconded by Councillor Edgar. Yes, thank you. I will put. We received the report. All those in. Oh no, how are we doing this today? What did we decide we're doing for voting? We're just doing physical thumbs up, aren't we? Is that right? Yep. In favour. Great. Okay. Those against receiving. No, that's carried. Now for the submission. All those in favour of the submission, so yes. I think that's a yes, yes, and those against. Okay, that is carried. Okay, well, we're a bit over our 45-minute break, aren't we? So we'll now take a break at 10 minutes past 10. And I think we'll probably resume at 10:30. Would that work for everybody? If anyone doesn't think that's long enough, you can come on your unmute and tell me. No, so we're going to be back here at 10:30. Just ask you to put your video on off and your mute on. Thank you.
Does anybody else have an apple? I think Mel does. Rachel Sanson, do you have an apple?
We are live streaming, by the way.
Oh, okay. I mean, Apple computer, not fruit. I'm trying to work out something on how to deal with something. I'll do it separately. Yeah, not that sort of apple. Thank you.
So just a reminder, councillors, we're going to start on page 94 when we go back.
Kia ora tātou, we're ready to resume our meeting. I just need to establish that we have quorum. We do, so we'll get underway. And we are now on to pages 95 through 208 of the agenda, and we are, this is the item in relation to Te Ara o Whakatū, the Nelson City Centre Spatial Plan. You'll see there are a suite of recommendations set out in that report. Councillor Edgar has already signalled to me that she wishes to move the recommendations, but I will open in a moment for questions and a chance for the officers to present the report. So it's quite a long suite of recommendations, but we can work through those in a moment. So I just welcome the officers to the meeting. We should have Ms. Gibellini and Mr. Gray. Lisa and Ellen, are you both available? Kia ora, welcome Ellen. Nice to see you in person. Hi Lisa. All right, so Ellen, are you going to present the report today?
Yes.
Welcome to the meeting, and thank you very much for the report and all of the work that you've put into the document that's attached to our agenda. So I'll just ask if there are any corrections or additions that you want to make, and you might want to give a brief sort of summary of the papers that we're receiving to consider today.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor, and through the chair, Te Ara o Whakatū, this is the pathway of Nelson. This is about creating a vision, setting a strategy, and identifying the pathways we will need to take as we reimagine the potential of our city center. To date, we've been on quite a journey, and the journey will continue. But over the last 6 to 8 months, we've developed a really strong, I think, pre-engagement process. We've had over 80 meetings. Over close to 300 attendees have attended those. Over 200 hours of discussions. We've intentionally kept meetings small so voices can be heard during those processes. And we've been developing a lot of the transformative actions iteratively, coming back to those groups multiple times. So the work that we've done in the past, I think, is considerable. We know that there's a lot of passion in our community about the city center. I want to take a moment to acknowledge, I think, the stress and the pressure of our businesses in the city center right now. I've gotten to know a lot of the shop owners and property owners, of course. And what we've, I guess, determined in this process, this journey over the last 6 months, is that they all agree that we need a plan. Developing our city center, I guess, in an ad hoc fashion, a piecemeal fashion, is not good work. It's not good business. It's not the way a smart little city should grow. So what we've been trying to do is develop some base values for how we grow, how we think about, and how we can envision the future of our city center. So Te Aroha Whakatū is the pathway of Nelson. It is something that's strong with our city center, a city center we want to grow with more people living here, a people-focused, place-based outcome that can attract that great talent, good businesses, and grow our city. So that's a little bit of the background. I think that, so there are a series of recommendations in the report, and we have both the main document, which is, sorry, it is a rather long document, but as a sort of, as a booklet, it will look not too dissimilar to a nice little square document like that. It'll be about 50 two-sided pages. And then we have an accompanied piece for the public feedback. And I think for councillors, what we are seeking in the report is to put this out to the public. Put this out next Monday, the 30th of August, going through to the 24th of September to get that feedback. We want to do this on Shape Nelson. And then what the question we're asking in that documentation for the public is, do we want a plan, a vision that we can sort of help decision makers like yourself make the decisions to help shape our city center, or do we continue to do it as we've been doing it more recently, where we kind of do it ad hoc? And we think there's a really strong proposition to have the plan. Let's go forward and do this. So I thank you, and I'll be open to take any questions.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you very much. And I really appreciate that you've had to finish this off during lockdown, and I know for getting the sort of the graphics and all that ready, that's been really challenging, but well done for the document we're receiving today. So I'll open for questions. If you could use your raise hand function, I'd appreciate that. If there are any questions? No questions. Councillor Bowater.
Morena. Thank you. Alan, just the visuals, the graphics, etc., that are actually in the document, they're just sort of like a impression. They're not actually a given that I'm just thinking visually people will look at this and think, oh, so that's going to be like that and that looks like that, because I know there's been some comments around on social media that how is that going to look like that on that street and things like that. So we're very much getting that message across that this is just a visual of potential, but not actually set in stone. This is what this building will look like in this area, etc., and things like that. Just, I mean, I know I'm not being pedantic. I'm just saying that some people, visual people, look at something and they take it as a given. Whereas to me, my understanding of this is just an impression of what the overall could look like. Is that a yes?
Yes. So through the chair, these are visual impressions. The renders, they do look very real, and they are accurate in the sense that the road widths are the right widths to accommodate vehicles or parking or all those things. But these are not actual designs, and it's really important to know for our community. And I think we have explicitly said this in the feedback document, that further work will be developed in the future on any of these projects, and we will need to consult on those actual options or the business cases. So we don't have a design for a whole city center as part of this plan. Those pieces will be forthcoming. It's also important, I think we've had a couple comments from a couple councillors. We've noted on any of those renders or those visualizations in the material that those are not actual designs. So we want to be really explicit about that. There will be more detail forthcoming as we get into specific streets or places. I hope that answers the question.
It absolutely does for me. It's been raised with me and I just wanted to ask that question. Thanks, Alan.
Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Kia ora, Alan. So a bunch of questions from me. First of all, on page 180 of the document, there's discussion about angle parking, and it looks at the example of Bridge Street. Now, I appreciate that this is just the concept at this stage. These aren't final designs, but I need to make the point that angle parking is unfriendly to cycling. And so my question is, if we're going to do things that are hostile, in fact, to cycling, won't that mean that our investment in modal shift will be compromised?
Yeah, so through the chair, thanks for the question. The preferred option for Bridge Street is actually not the angled parking, but it was an option we explored and discussed through those pre-engagement meetings. So I think the idea is that we have considered car parking as part of possible options, but it's also important, as you've pointed out, to understand, well, what would be the disbenefits of looking at that particular option. So when you actually look at the Bridge Street proposal as part of the Streets for People transformative action, it is not showing that particular option, but we wanted to talk about it within the context of parking, that we have considered that. But you're right, we have heard from stakeholders who felt like cycling with angle parking is problematic. And so we also, I think with Bridge Street, are looking to kind of, I guess, complete a sort of existing gap in our active mode network that could provide safe cycling through the center of town. That would need to still be slow cycling because we obviously will have a lot of people walking about, but that particular preferred option starts to address how cycling can safely be part of that outcome.
Okay, well, I think we'll get a fair bit of feedback on the negative parts, to negative side to angle parking. Thank you for that. My next question through the chair relates to an action plan. I know this is a long-term vision, and there's some commentary in the document about when we might see things happen and how this will work. But I also need to point out that it's almost a year since council kicked for touch a opportunity to do something people-friendly in Trafalgar Street, and there's nothing in here that, unless I've missed it, that tells me when we will actually see some physical changes. A lot of wonderful pictures, great picture of Church Street, but a lot of people will be thinking, you know, we need this now. When are we going to see some change?
Yeah. So I guess through the chair, if you look at page 183 in the materials, we do look at a delivery program for how we can start to roll this work out. Both in terms of potential capital expenditure, if we can align with key projects that are happening across the city center, but there's also a section that I think looks at how we can look at tactical urbanism and come back to some of those those ideas and those thinkings and the budgets that have been created by council to do more trialing. So we have considered both of those. They're not detailed programs. We need to consult and look at how other opportunities avail themselves to think about, oh, well, maybe we can do Bridge Street if the Kainga Ora proposal can go forward. So we need to make sure that all these things are lining up, but we do want to start relatively soon in this space. Thank you.
Through the chair, when you say relatively soon, what does that mean?
Yeah, so through the chair, obviously there are applications that are out right now. We want to look at what those opportunities can be. If something like Bridge Street can come forward early, we'll get into business case work on that next calendar year. So some of those timings and dependencies are looking at some of some of funding applications, other projects that we're looking at that we'll talk about after this project. Those can start to enable some outcomes. We can do tactical work quite quickly if on a number of spaces, especially with laneways and some of those types of work. We can start to do work in the next year.
Thank you.
That would be great. Yes, yeah, thank you. I do have a couple more questions. Just pointing out, actually, on page 179, just a really pedantic thing, it talks about in the second to bottom paragraph, it talks about and supporting the transition of low carbon vehicles. I think that should say the transition to low carbon vehicles. We're not expecting low carbon vehicles to transition. We want people to start using them, I think.
Okay.
So just to point that out. And last question for now is, and I'm sure there'll be, well, why do we have two forwards? We've got a forward, there's a lot of words in here. It's a big document, and we're going to have according to this, a forward by the Mayor and a forward by the Chair. I'm just wondering why 2 forwards.
Yep. So through the chair, and the chair or the chair of the subcommittee might want to speak to this. My understanding is, they would like to be part of this document.
So Laurie, it's a flagship project for the city that we've been waiting for the spatial plan for a long time, and it's a big key document. And so, but it's also one where I really want this to be a focus area, which is why we've got the subcommittee as well. So yes, it's an all of council and a council matter, but I actually want to message up the fact that actually this project has got a steward sitting through that urban development subcommittee as well as dedicated for that. So that's why that's there. You got any other questions? And then I'm going to move on. Otherwise, I'll move on to Councillor Fulton.
Not for now, but this sort of thing, I always think less is more.
Councillor Fulton.
Thank you. Sorry, have to unmute myself and then get back to my emails. Right, I'm just bringing up my email now. So first thing is page 111 of our agenda. There's a typo at the bottom. It says it's missing the R for journey.
Okay. Councillor Fulton, I'm really sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Is it when you were reading your emails, we can't see you on the screen, and
can't you?
No. But that's okay. So
my screen go off if I go into my emails?
I think it just did. So just as long as we know that's what's happening, there's not much you can do about that. So that's right. So you keep going, and we'll just know that that's what's happening.
Sorry. So that's so you can't see me now?
No, we can't.
Oh, I've got it specially poised so you can see me, but sorry, I can't read off my emails and have the screen on at the same time then. So page 180, similar questions to what Councillor Laurie's just asked, but I'm also asking about the option to build a parking building to mitigate parking losses. And I guess my questions are around how does that align with climate action, with the vision, with the strategic thinking of the rest of the document in terms of, first of all, my questions would be around the embodied carbon of building a building like that and the economic feasibility of that. So has there been some sort of analysis of that in terms of it being a viable option or not?
Yes, through the chair, the notion of the parking building is something that has come up quite frequently in the pre-engagement work, and the parking strategy team have been at a lot of those meetings. So on page 180 in your report, we look at 3 options for how we can think about growing our city, especially a city where we're going to grow more housing and more residents and more jobs, around how we facilitate, at least in sometime within this 30-year period, the continued need for vehicle access into the city. The idea of a parking building isn't something that is a keystone part of this plan, and we need to understand and answer questions about, if we were considering that as an option, who is that parking for? And so if we are looking at growing our residential population 20-fold in the city center, that might be something we need to think about. I think the other thing with this is we I guess want to put this out for people to feedback on, and it is something we've heard a lot about in our meetings with stakeholders, and the parking strategies considering this as well. We want to hear from the public on this, and there might be public that said that's not in line with where our city wants to go, but there are other people that really want to feel like, hey, maybe if we can transition our vehicle fleets to cleaner emissions and things like that, we still need to think about that. So like I said, it's not the cornerstone of our plan, but it is something we've heard a lot about, and we want to get more feedback from the public on that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I just have a couple more questions around that then. Why is there no mention of car sharing as a viable option or alternative as well, because obviously if we all own our own cars and they're sitting in parking buildings most of the time, that's not really a smart city thinking. So there's no mention of car sharing, there's no mention of micro mobility transport, and there's no mention of sort of increasing parking on the around the fringe of the city. So for example, we provided quite a lot of additional parking when we did Trafalgar Park upgrade. Why are those not put forward as options as well?
So through the chair, some of these are getting into a little bit of detail, not a lot of detail, but the parking strategy will be touching on the ideas around car share and things like that. I think around micromobility is part of a range of active mode incentives that this plan does address. We haven't spelled it out specifically because that's a fast-moving field, but we are looking that our streets can accommodate slow-moving mobility that would include micromobility. I think on the parking on the fringe, or increasing parking on the fringe, we currently have almost 2,400 car parks that are fringe and city center. I can't speak to the detail of the extra spaces in the Trafalgar Park. I have asked the transport team to come back on that. They're looking into that, so we'll have to come back to you on that. I think that if we are looking at ways to create more parking, the fringe is probably areas that we can look at to do that. So again, the parking strategy will be looking, I think, more in detail on that specific issue.
Thank you, Ellen.
Okay. I guess I still feel like you've put forward 3 options and they look like they've sort of been weighted equally on page 180. So the way I read them is they're being proposed as 3 equally viable options, and I actually don't agree that 2 of them are viable. Like Matt's just touched on the second one and I'm touching on the third one, and yet there's a whole lot of other viable options which are not being discussed in this document, and I kind of think that those should have been teased out, even though it might be not quite as high level as you'd like to fail to mention car sharing or micromobility as a way of the future in terms of future thinking around transport options is to me quite a big omission from this document. Is that possible for that to be added in at this stage?
Through the chair, what I would recommend doing is let's get the feedback from the public on that, and then let's fine tune the document once we have that feedback in hand.
I think to keep things moving along, Councillor Fulton, that's a good point that Alan's making. That I think we're going to have to get something out and then get that feedback.
Okay, all right.
Just because of the time constraints, and I would just say, councillors, that look, COVID really hasn't helped the team in terms of getting this document finalised, and it won't for the rest of the week. So I think they will be pretty reluctant to make further changes, Ellen, to the document. Is that right? Is it sort of like up to the really final graphic stage?
Yes, Madam Mayor. I think we are kind of there with this, notwithstanding a few tweaks of wordsmithing and things, but I think that those changes can be made after the public feedback.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Fulton.
Okay, I have one more question regarding page 194 of our agenda. So that's the page on what our concerns are. So there's 3 concerns, and one of them is our climate is changing. I'm just curious why the responses on this page, so the look out for section of this page on our climate is changing are the things we should be concerned about in terms of the future, in terms of climate change into the future. Yet the other 3 challenges, which is Nelson's population is growing and our economy is shifting, the look out for kind of the solutions. So why have we not put in our solutions to climate change on page 194?
Yes, through the chair, the solutions actually for each of the lookout fors are annotated as kind of notes on our captions in the actual renders as part of Streets for People. So this section on our 3 challenges states these are the things we have some concern about. They are measurable. And then the proposals, the visualizations in the proposals are annotated to say, here's how that future could look to address, whether it's heat island or permeability or biodiversity and habitat enhancement. So we have kind of looked at our proposal as a way of providing response to those particular challenges.
Oh, I totally get that, but on page 195, Nelson's population is growing. You say look out for increased pedestrian activity, increased public amenity, more high quality social spaces to socialise and linger, more space for artistic and cultural expression. So you've given the solutions to our population growth as a concern, but with our climate is changing, you've given what the concerns are. I don't have a problem with them being there, but I would have expected you to have laid it out in at least a similar style. So our economy is shifting. You say look out for new and exciting retail opportunities, a more diverse spread of employment opportunities, innovative ways to fill vacant shops, a unique place that is more attractive for business relocation. So your other two concerns, you've given positive solutions. With our climate is changing, you've just listed what the issues are, and I'm quite concerned that that it's not. If you had done the same with the other 2 pages, I wouldn't be asking questions about it. But I feel like you need to have a similar format for each section here.
Okay. So, Alan, I'm listening to this conversation, and I guess I think that's quite a legitimate observation in that you haven't written our economy is shifting, you haven't written shops will be closing. You've written, so I think that is, we'll leave you to have a think about that. So we might just come back in the wrap up.
I think we can make those changes relatively easy, Councillor and Mayor.
Okay, thank you, to frame it in the same way.
Yeah,
thank
absolutely.
you very much. Okay, next up is Councillor Neil Stevens.
Kia ora, thanks, and thanks, Alan, for this. First, I'll start with some of the questions I sent through to you, and just following off the back of that sort of discussion around climate change is obviously we've now got the Inaya Tonu Nei, the Climate Change Commission's advice to government, that sort of pathway towards a carbon neutral country by 2050. How does this vision get us to that destination in terms of our urban planning in the city centre?
Yes, through the chair. Thank you, Councillor Neil Stevens. I think that 30-year window starts to line up really well with other targets that this council, I think, has signed up to, including the carbon neutrality. I think how we look at doing that is across several of the actions that we are proposing in the plan. One is around, obviously, a much kind of intensified greener urban infrastructure, both with biomass of trees, but also at the ground level as well, in terms of being able to sequester carbon and accommodate additional stormwater capacity. I think that that neutralization and strong reduction in greenhouse gas emissions, it's a big part of a people-focused, place-based outcome of our city. Getting more people living here that aren't having to sort of rely on that commute, getting people reformatting and reprioritizing all of our streets in the city center for people, maybe limiting some access, i.e. like a one-way street through Bridge Street. So how we can try to layer up a lot of different ways that we can minimize or reduce our carbon emissions, but also sequester and be able to sort of treat that in our city is sort of the foundation of what the plan is about.
Thank you. Councillor Neil Stevens, just before you go on, I'm trying to multitask here, but I'm just trying to find your questions in my inbox. Are they there?
Oh, they might not have been CC'd through you.
They should have been sent to me, Councillor, so I can, and the Chief Executive, and as part of the process. Could you forward that email just so that we can follow along? That would be really helpful.
Sure.
But the same for councillors, just in future for meetings, that really is important, particularly on Zoom. But that's a standard practice for every meeting, that you send your questions through so we can all run a organised meeting. Thank you.
Don't worry, I also have some questions I didn't send through. So, Alan, just on that second, just sort of following on from that, within that sort of page on climate change, one thing that's not mentioned there is inundation. And obviously it's a conversation we're having sort of throughout the organisation, and just curious how this plan responds to that sort of, I guess, threat and risk that we've got for parts of our city centre.
Yeah, I guess the short answer is it's a 30-year plan. What risks and role of inundation within that time frame are probably less certain than, say, flooding or certainly the greenhouse gas aspect. So we've really focused more on limiting or reducing our greenhouse gas emissions within the time frame of the plan. I also think that building up rather than building out, getting more people living in our city starts to prepare that. And obviously those individual projects and the sites that they sit on might have different levels of risk relative to inundation and flood. We'll need to work through the modeling to make sure at the detail of those sites that can be accommodated. But I think generally the plan supports growing up, not out.
I guess I'm just looking at sort of some of our own modelling and those coastal inundation sort of risk maps we put out, even within the lifetime of this plan, at that sort of using the modelling that we generally take, we do have a risk for, even within that 50-year, 30-year time period, risk for a decent chunk of the city. And so, you know, are you comfortable that we've got that lens coming through enough?
Well, through the chair, I think we need to look at the Nelson Plan and adaptation strategies and other things that are still in progress right now to form up a really strong view, a comprehensive view about how we're going to address those. I think Te Aroha Whakatū is somewhat of a flexible document that could be updated once those things are better known, but I don't think it's the purpose of this document to lead that.
Great, thanks. Just on to, obviously within this plan, there's quite a few sort of moves towards shared spaces. I'm just thinking of some of the shared spaces I know, places like Lower Cuba Street, which aren't necessarily, haven't necessarily achieved that vision of proper delineation between that sort of road carriageway and pedestrian uses. How do we make sure that if we are to go ahead with shared spaces, that they function well and that they're sort of excellent, high quality urban environments?
Thank you. Through the chair, I think we have to look at the framework of our city center. I mean, we're kind of blessed with this sort of structure of a ring road, and everything within that. It's quite a defined sort of boundary to our city center core, that everything within that, and this is something we've talked about a lot with the, in the 80 some odd meetings, is that what we do within that needs to change and will continue to change. And, already the data shows that most of those vehicle speeds are even under the 30 kilometers that we've reduced those areas to in the last year. I think we can do more and more in that space. So I think the ring road is the thing that creates a boundary of change. And within that, things are going to be going slower, and it's going to need to be people prioritized for safety. And that will enable those outcomes of shared space to work better. So that's going to be the key here, I think, is having a good defined boundary that says this is where things change.
Thanks. And then just finally, I've been using lockdown to read my Jane Jacobs. So love the focus on improving our footpaths and things like that. Within the document, there's that sort of value of, this plan will invite diversity. And I'm really curious as to sort of where you see those key points in this plan for making both the city more accessible, both in terms of the variety of people who live here in terms of age and disability, but also that sort of range of economic accessibility and providing a variety of attractions for, you know, people throughout this sort of economic spectrum. So yeah, can you sort of speak to those, where you see those key points shining through in this plan?
Yeah, through the chair, the key part of that is getting more people living in our city and more types of housing as a product of that, that look at that sort of economic and equity line that becomes blurred. It isn't the home of the exclusive, you know, it is expensive to develop in our city. The dirt's expensive. Doing, you know, medium density housing is expensive propositions. But I think if we can work with partners and government and other ways to find outcomes that create that ability for equity to happen in our streets, more families living in our city, these become real game changers for how our city can start to grow. To me, housing's part of that. The other is having the science and technology precinct emerging, you know, 1,000 knowledge workers and the support businesses that will no doubt emerge as to support that industry. That will represent different age people who want to be part of Nelson's future and live here as well. And so as we think about more families, different ages, we need a city that works for all. The 880 program is something I follow. So that's based in Columbia, but that's how you deal with cities that work for 8-year-olds, also work great for 80-year-olds. And this is the idea of how we can encourage play in great spaces in our city, how we can reprioritize our streets. I have no doubt that these things will lend themselves to that sort of Jane Jacobs vision of these active streets that are outside where people are living. Those are the great streets. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
You're on mute, Mia.
Sorry, and I'm about to go off video, but I'm still here. So Councillor Noonan is next up, and I will be back on video in just a second.
Thank you. Nicely done, Ellen. I mean, if you'd taken the vote now, you would have been away. I've just got a very boring query, and that is that my foreword, the two, are completely blank. And I don't know whether that's the same for everyone, but clearly that's not a minor amendment. So I'm just wondering how we're going to deal with that.
So through the chair, we are working on those forwards right now. So the communications team and myself are working with the mayor and the chair of the urban development subcommittee to get those words in place. So we're working on that. I hope we're close.
So through the mayor, I might just add that we could add, I'll look at the recommendation as to whether we can include some wording in there to say, noting that the forwards will be added, or words to that effect. I'll have a look at that now.
It's clear, I'd appreciate that. It's fine.
Okay, so will we get a copy of that before it gets the go button?
No, you'll trust the mayor and the deputy mayor to write sensible things in the offices to make sure that we don't make spelling mistakes, because they're really good at they're really good at checking that stuff out. So we should be good.
Okay, so there'll be just a note that we haven't seen that when it went out. Is that what we're proposing? Okay, thanks.
Next up is Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Ellen, I can't thank you enough for the amount of work that you've put into this. Incredible amount of work with your team, your project team, and you know, that's Paul Jennings was engaged to do the communication and engagement process for us. Ellen, I think it's important at this stage that we spell out clearly. So I'd like you to just cover again the wider engagement that we're about to embark on. I mean, your pre-engagement was phenomenally good, I think. Councillor Deputy Mayor, Councillor Eager and myself did attend many of those meetings, but certainly not 80, and 300 attendances and 200 hours of discussion. So what's the plan? What's your exciting plan for the wider engagement?
So thank you through the chair. You know, and it's laid out in the report. obviously the focus was going to be, we're going to, well, I guess to back up, this is a big plan. A 30-year plan is huge. It is I think, a flagship document, I think the mayor mentioned. But looking at it in terms of its significance, it's probably low to moderate. We're not changing, activities. We're not doing something that's not irreversible. And I think, as I spelled out earlier, future details forthcoming on whatever projects, come forward as capital works. With that, so it isn't a special consultative process. We are looking to go out for a 1-month period. A lot of that was always going to be focused on Shape Nelson. We were going to be looking at working with our local media, with newspaper and radio. The radio is going to be difficult in level 3 and 4. We were planning an expo where we can bring people back into this, but obviously in the last week, all bets are off on that for some time. We might look at other innovative ways that we can reach out. And we're talking about those literally as we're having this meeting. And some of those might be videos where we're talking with different stakeholders across those sort of sectors that we were part of that pre-engagement, to get their view on what the plan is saying. I don't know that things like webinars and virtual expos are particularly effective. We might do Q&As. There could be other ways. So we're going to be talking with Paul Jennings and our communications team at Council to think about what we can do as a really good extra to make sure people are going to be aware of this. I think the other thing that we're going to be doing is some work to summarize this document. It is a big document, the main document, as a sort of 8-page distillation that could be an insert with our Nelson. We might have video treatments we're working to finalize that could go up on social media. So we are looking at a lot of different ways that the messages of this plan can get out there and be accessible for a lot of our community.
So, Alan, it would be fair to say that we've got it in hand, haven't we? Yep.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, you've done such an exceptional job with the pre-engagement. I thought that you would have lots of interesting approaches in mind with you got Paul Jennings engaged in that area. I'm thinking of drop-in sessions, smaller meetings, all sorts of ways of reaching out that I think the community would appreciate. No question about that. Madam Mayor, I'm happy to second this item, but
thank you, Councillor Courtney.
I'm a little hesitant too, because I think it's such an important document, spreading over 30 years. Perhaps you would like to do it. I wouldn't.
No, I'm quite happy to have you second that motion, Councillor Courtney. Absolutely happy with that. So don't be hesitant at all. Just be bold.
Thank you. Oh,
yeah,
no,
I'm bold.
Stop it. No, that word I love. Stop it. No, that's pressed a button for me now. Can I? Oh, dearie me. That's
You don't need to say any more, Councillor Courtney.
I do. I want to say, now you've pressed the button and said bold. I want to say that I was pleased that you had touched on, Alan, the fact that this is, to use a phrase, a living document, that it's up for change, not dramatic change. I mean, the core direction is important that it stays in place, but oh no, it is a living document. And once we've had this wider community engagement, there will be tweaks, there will be additions and deletions possibly, and we would welcome those if they're constructive and really benefit the whole citywide plan. That would be fantastic. What I love most about this is we're turning people's dreams into a plan. Dreams of our city, the sort of city they want, we're formulating it and putting it into a plan.
Sorry to interrupt, that would sound like a debate. So we'll take that as your debate in the interest of—
You can take it any way you like.
You're fabulous. Right, I'm going to Councillor Eager for debate now. I think we're over all questions and debate, please, Councillor Eager, so we can move this along a little bit. Be good to get something out the door today.
Yes, so the first one is just a minutiae, is just on pages 200 and 202, which is the feedback summary document. Just noting that it is the pathway of Nelson, not the pathway to Nelson. I just wanted to, that is going to be corrected, but I think we just needed to note on the record that that was going to be corrected. We want to get both the Te Reo translation correct and also the name of our document. So that being said, happy to go into debate. So look, firstly, I really want to thank the team for all of their work on this. There has been a lot of meetings. There's been a lot of one-on-ones as well for people who wanted to have those in-depth. Having the meetings quite small was very purposeful to enable people to have a say. We know that, you know, you turn up to something with 200 people, a lot of people will sit very quiet and not get to have their say and walk away unsatisfied. I went to a number of the meetings, as did Councillor Courtney, and we were just so delighted to see that everyone felt that they could have a say, and whether they were contrary to each other. And in fact, they're the better discussions, not people sitting there and going, yes, 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 but actually people challenging and people pushing back and putting their ideas forward. And this is what we have here. You know, we have the pathways that have been identified, the vision, the strategy. And while in the projects, there will be, you know, still further debate and discussion. As Alan has identified, this isn't a capital works program or an infrastructure strategy. You know, it's a strategy that's both dependent on, but will also guide a number of our other strategies and bylaws and policies. It can't be all things to, you know, all people, but it provides that vision, and everyone agreed we needed to change. And, you know, we get hundreds of submissions about our city centre, and the one uniting factor that we always get is this passion for our city. It is our soul, it is our heartbeat. And I think that this 30-year strategy helps lay out that vision and provides the pathway towards that vision. And I think that's really critical. And look, there's a number of people who this will be the first time they've had the opportunity to engage. And so I'm excited to hear their views as well. But, you know, if you look in the document and see that broad cross-section of who we have already talked to, I think, you know, we've really tried to, you know, engage as widely as possible to input. For me, this has been one of the most extensive and rewarding pre-engagement processes I think we've been through, and being able to have that variety of input from, you know, young parents, older people, cyclists, motorists, retailers, visitors, etc., etc. Yeah, it's just been an amazing process to be part of, and I look forward to being part of the next stages, albeit probably slightly modified because of COVID levels. So the expo, of course, won't be able to go ahead, but I really look forward to the community feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eager. Before I go to the next speaker, just note that we're adding a clause to say, notes the forwards will be approved by the Mayor and Deputy Mayor and Chief Executive. Hopefully that'll satisfy everyone on the screen. I'm not planning on putting those up and share screening. I think that's reasonably straightforward. So moving into the next debate, Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for inserting that, just the note that we haven't seen it. But yes, I completely look forward to seeing what you're writing, and I'm sure it'll be interesting and inviting the public to actually have input. I think it's the important part. Look, I just want to say that I support this. It's been a long journey. It feels like a long journey. We've talked to a lot of people, and the CBD and the people that use the CBD have requested a plan, so that they can plan. I think it's really important that we put something to the public and the CBD users so that they can make their plans. And I think it's really, they need some certainty of where we're going so that they can do that. I do have a slight concern regarding reduced parking, and I think that will be reflected back with some feedback, and how we actually accommodate that will be the challenge, and I think that's okay too. Alan referred to the ring road in some of his talking, and I recall when that was done by a previous council to actually enable the cars and the vehicular transport to get around outside the city. So, you know, maybe the thinking of that council has actually enabled this plan to have some sort of ability to keep that central part for the people that are walking and dwelling and get the cars around the edges. I think that could be really, really helpful. So thanks to those that were on that council. Don't know if Councillor Mill was on that council or not, but I think that was some foresight on their part. And the last thing I really want to say is, look, I think it's important that it's a staged and agreed to plan so that it doesn't get lost over time, that actually that we know where we're going and the important parts. There might be some things that we can do early on to make it happen. But I think the staged approach is really important, and that hopefully the community will agree to a staged approach so that we can see where we're going in the future for the CBD. And look, I live very close, and I invite others to join me, because there aren't many of us in the CBD area or close to, and it's a great way of living. So I'm quite excited about some of the options in here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Noonan. Councillor O'Neill-Stevens.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I want to start by really acknowledging the incredibly hard mahi that Alan and that whole wider team that's been working alongside and behind him has done in, I think, really championing that human scale of engagement in developing a more human scale city. So it's been very, very enjoyable and exciting to see, and I look forward to see where it goes from here. Looking at this plan, I do think, for me, it doesn't quite hit yet that 30-year vision, sitting more in that maybe 15 to 20-year, 10 if we're ambitious. But that's why I'm very comforted to know that this is a core foundation and a living document for change. And I think that we will, sitting here now, it is very hard to imagine what our city in 2050 will look like, what a carbon neutral city will look like. But I think that we do have to just really start thinking hard about the fact that it will be a significant amount of change to achieve that. And it's change we're going to have to make. And change is hard. And so I think it's also really important that we as a council own this document as well, and encourage the community to own it too. So I also think that question around sea level rise and inundation will need to be addressed. Where we start focusing our developments and where we focus our the growth of our city will be impacted by it, and we need to really accelerate that thinking into everything we do. But at the end of the day, I'm really happy to support this this beautiful vision, and just want to say that whilst it is a vision sort of for the central city, those values can be applied well beyond the ring roads. What sits at the core of this is creating an accessible city that functions for the people who live in it, and that should be our vision for the whole of the city, not just the central city. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Neill-Stevens. Councillor Laurie, and then Councillor Fulton, and then we're back to the right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I reckon Alan Gray has probably got the toughest job at Nelson City Council. A lot of people have tough jobs at council, but Alan, I think yours might just be the toughest. So kudos to you and your team, and to Lisa and to Paul Jennings and everyone else who's helped to get us to this stage. I love the direction that this proposes for Nelson Whakatū. I love the way it makes our central city a place more for people, and the potential that all the potential that comes with it. Personally, I think it could have. I'd love for it to have been bolder, but like I said, you've got a really difficult job, and you're trying to keep everyone on side, and I respect that. One point I would make is if in 30 years' time we still have cars driving up and down Trafalgar Street between Hardy Street and Bridge Streets, which is what is proposed here, then I think actually we will have failed to really move our city forward into a human scale centre that really works. So I see that's in there. I really hope that's not the case in 30 years' time. Personally, I hope it's not the case in 10 years' time. I think that people are going to be very interested in what we put out. And I would really encourage them to be really bold in what they tell us they want for the city. I really hope that when we get to the next stage, we as council have the courage to really push and to really move forward. I really hope that once again, we don't get captured by the people with the loudest voices and the deepest pockets, because I think that would be a tragedy. And I think all the feedback that I've been hearing, that we've been hearing from Alan and the rest of the team about how people have been responding to the work you've already been doing, tells me that's not what the city wants. The city doesn't want to be held hostage by a small group of people. The city wants to go forward. So yeah, I think it's fantastic it's going out there. And if anyone's interested, Councillor O'Neill Stevens used the expression human scale a couple of times. Some of you will remember back in 2014, I organised a screening at State Cinema for councillors and staff of a movie called The Human Scale. It's an absolutely fantastic film about how you can transform cities, and everything that's in it is still very true for today. So if anyone wants to find it on Apple Movies, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Thanks again, everyone, for the work that's gone into this. Let's go forward. Let's do it.
Thanks, Councillor Laurie. Councillor Fulton.
Yes, thank you. Hopefully you can see me this time because I don't need my email up. Thanks so much for your incredible work, Alan, and the rest of your team. I particularly enjoyed our conversations, and I know you've worked really hard to incorporate everyone's feedback. I'm a little disappointed about the car parking building and that being in there. I think that it goes against the grain of the essence of this document. I think that we have values and principles and a vision which is really thinking about the future and being bold. And when you consider building a building which will last for the next 100 years for a solution which only needs to last for 10 years, I think that that is short-sighted. So hopefully that will change at a later date. I understand that some of the community does consider that that is a solution. I'm also a little concerned about the lack of te reo and sort of the immersion of Te Ao Māori principles throughout the document. I know it's really strongly worded on page 124 of our agenda, but I feel like that's not being picked up and reflected elsewhere. I had given that feedback at an earlier workshop and sort of recall that we had an earlier draft which had more cultural walkways, and that reflected more strongly through the document. So maybe that can be picked up and reflected again at a later date. I know it's quite hard, but I think if our partnership's really meaningful in terms of that embracing cultural diversity, it needs to be throughout the document, just not on one page. Finally, there's one other typo. It is page 183, there's a typo. It says he when it should be the in one of the bullet points. And I haven't got that in front of me now to tell you where it is, but there's a typo there. And that'll do. Yeah, I'm excited for it to be going out to the community, and I'm excited that we have something, so that's great. And I do love the layout in terms of the tree and the shaping from a vision up to a strategy, up to the action plan. So that's really a great piece of work.
Thank you, Councillor Fulton, and we'll just head back to the Deputy Mayor. I'll just say before we do, look, I think, progress on some of these key issues is absolutely critical to the well-being of our community. And I just want to acknowledge the city development team's guidance on how to approach the spatial plan. And I'll just reflect on a comment from Councillor Laurie earlier, which was to say that a previous report had kicked a proposal to touch. And I'm just going to reflect on actually what the advice was at the time from Lisa and Ellen, which was, it wasn't a kicking to touch. It was, we really want to do this piece of work and do this in sequence. And so we supported that advice to say, let's get this sequenced up. And I'm looking at what we've got today, and I think that was really wise advice from the team. So I just want to thank you for that, because it's not easy to make those decisions and give that advice when we're pushing and pushing, wanting things done. It's actually really hard to get elected members to pause and do things in that sort of sequence. And so I think we really have got the value from that time. And I've listened to the debate from elected members, and I think there are a range of things that they're saying they don't think is strong enough, or this is different. But actually, that's the weaving together of community views and the value of the pre-engagement. So I just want to thank you for your, for leading this out into the community and with the community and alongside the community. And I hope that's the process, and I know it will be, that we go through as we get feedback on the document. Handing over to Councillor Gifford to write a reply.
Thank you. Look, in all of our community meetings, as well as feedback we've received, through LTP or in response to media, one uniting factor is everyone has agreed we need to change. And I know change is hard, but change is also exciting, and change opens opportunities. The city centre has changed significantly since I was a child, and I appreciate that it needs to change significantly for the future, for the sake of our people, our economy, and our climate change responsiveness. Our city centre needs to respond to a lot of change, as well as a lot of needs and wants, and bring these together. So I welcome and look forward to the feedback we'll receive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eager. We're now going to do our voting, and are we going to do this by just this way? Are we happy with that? Or we can use whatever we want to do, or whatever mechanism you like. Support those. I better say it though, hadn't I? Better do the words. We're just going to move what was in the recommendation plus the addition of the note around the forward. So all those in favour? I think that is that Pete? Is that a thank you, highly technical approach. Those against, anyone opposed to putting it out for feedback? Nobody opposed. Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And we're now going to take a break, and now we are sort of a little bit later than our previous break, but we're going to catch up on the next item, I think. So we'll just head away now. How long would you like? A 10-minute break or a 15-minute break? You can put your microphones on and let me know. 10, says Brian. Okay, anyone? 10 is it. 10-minute break and we'll be back. Thanks, Robin. Thanks, Elaine. All right, looks like we've got a quorum. Just checking that we've got some governance advisors.
You do.
Okay. All right, so I think we'll keep going. So we're now going to go to the report, community engagement on the sale of 69 to 101 Achilles Avenue and 42 Rutherford Street to Kāinga Ora, pages 60 to 94 of your agenda. I will welcome Ms. Gabellini. Lisa, welcome to the meeting. And I'll hand over to you to present the report. If there are any corrections or additions, if you can just talk us through those, probably referenced by page number and paragraph if needed. Kia ora.
Morning. So would you like me to give just a brief background?
I think that would be good. Thank you.
So your council's obviously aware we consulted on housing affordability and intensification in the LTP, and that included partnering with government agencies and using council's property to leverage to address the housing crisis, particularly our consultation focused on housing affordability and intensification. And council received a number of over 300 submissions in support of addressing the current housing crisis. Council's also got an established relationship with Kāinga Ora after the years-long process of working through divestment of council's community housing. And so following on from those things, officers received an expression of interest from Kāinga Ora to purchase two inner city council-owned properties, 69 to 101 Achilles Ave and 42 Rutherford Street, for them to work with council to provide social and affordable housing. So this is quite an opportunity for Nelson, having the interest of Kāinga Ora assisting with the housing crisis, and it's a different opportunity to that than to what we have otherwise had on the plate. Kāinga Ora are a well-resourced and capable central government organisation, and they're really committed under their new mandate to providing both social and different types of affordable housing in Nelson. So officers have been working with Kāinga Ora to produce the feedback document. Kāinga Ora is also keen, along with council, to seek the views of the community to be able to consider those in making a decision on whether or not to sell these two key inner city properties. If council does agree to go through this public feedback process and does make a decision to sell the properties to Kāinga Ora, there'll be a long process. Well, there'll be a process after that whereby Kāinga Ora undertakes their due diligence, and also council has the opportunity to negotiate via a sale and purchase agreement for various outcomes that it might seek to achieve from those properties. We've done a bit of pre-engagement in the lead up to writing the feedback document and this report. Officers from council and Kāinga Ora have had pre-engagement meetings with all iwi. And we have also done some pre-engagement with property owners and developers who have expressed an interest in these sites previously. And we also have met with leaseholders who currently occupy those sites ahead of this item becoming public. There are a couple of amendments that need to be made to the report on page 60. On page 61 in resolution 6, where it talks about approving the consultation process, and it identifies it being set out in paragraphs 3.15 to 3.19. The numbering in the report is a bit dodgy, and so those numbers need to be replaced with sections 4.7 to 4.11. And you may also note that when you get to section 4.7 on page 63, the numbering reverts back to 3 in between 4.7 and 4.8. So I think if the resolution just refers to the engagement approach between 4.7 and 4.11, that will have that covered. There's also a number of changes to the consultation approach, simply because we're in lockdown. So that consultation approach that's set out from paragraph 4.7 on page 63 of your agenda. There's a couple of things that can't occur. We won't be able to do a letter drop to adjoining property and business owners. That's identified in 3.84. The iwi managers meeting, which we were going to take a housing update report to last week, was cancelled. We were planning on having some site signage, and that also won't be possible. And there's also some questions over the ability to have hard copy feedback documents available, and it's also questionable, as Ellen talked about earlier. We were going to have a stand at the expo on Te Ara o Whakatū, and that's a little bit up in the air at this stage. That's all the corrections.
Thanks, Lisa. Appreciate that, and understandably, we've been trying to get excuse me, reports prepared during lockdown, so that's fine. We can follow 4.7 to 4.8, just acknowledging those sub-clauses have got the wrong numbers, but that's okay. All right, so did everyone follow just to change that last clause 6 in the recommendation? Okay, I'll open for questions. Any questions for Lisa? Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Lisa. First question is, I imagine we're going to get a lot of feedback on this, but what I'm hearing from a number of people is they're not quite sure what they're going to be giving feedback on because they can't see a finished design of what is actually proposed. And I get that we're actually asking people for their thoughts on us selling the properties, but what a lot of people want to know is why can't they see what the city will get if we sell these properties? I wonder what your thoughts might be on that.
So through the Mayor, I mean, this is a catch-22 that we often find ourselves in with plan changes and other consultations that we do. I understand that it is hard to give feedback on a proposal if you don't have the exact proposal in front of you. But before we could progress down to any kind of design stage, Climate Order would need to have some commitment that council is willing to enter into negotiation to sell these properties, to divest them, and we can't do that without council first making that decision. To rectify that, we have tried in the feedback document. There's a number of high-level design outcomes that we have agreed with Climate Order that would need to be achieved, and so they represent matters of best practice for urban design, flood and climate response, and building sustainability, and so that's the only real means we have at this stage in the process of giving assurance to the public what the design outcomes would be like.
Okay, through the chair, Kai Ora have done similar developments in other parts of the country. Will we be pointing Nelsonians to those projects so they can look at them and get an idea of what might be involved?
Through the Mayor, yes, we do, and we in the FAQ, so on page 92 of your agenda, we provide links to a couple of other of Climate Order's flagship developments. So people can get a feel for the type of high quality architectural style that Climate Order use in their social and affordable housing developments.
Thank you for that. A couple more questions through the chair. I think one thing that perhaps doesn't get emphasised as much as it could is what this would mean in terms of actual investment in the Nelson economy, money coming into the central city that wouldn't be coming in otherwise. Have you got an idea of what this would mean in terms of actual financial investment in the central city?
Through the Mayor, these are significant building projects. You could, a significant cost build in the magnitude consistent with the library proposal. In discussions with Kāinga Ora, they often highlight the other benefits in terms of the potential to have apprenticeships with NMIT in the construction process, to utilise local architects and local construction firms during the development. So I think that, yes, there are a number of spin-off benefits apart from providing up to 175 homes for Nelsonians in the city centre.
So through the chair, just to clarify, you referenced the library. The library has a budget of $46 million if you include inflation. Are we talking about a sum of that size?
Through the mayor, yeah, we're talking about a significant construction budget.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Yep, thanks.
Councillor Laurie, just in terms of the library, and I think it's a good comparison actually, in terms of the fact that it's got a lot of the library precinct work with it too. So it'll be interesting just to see how this one compares. Yeah, very interesting. I'll go to Councillor Noonan. Councillor Eger has indicated she would like to move this, and I'd like to second it. So that's attended to. But I'll go to Councillor Noonan now for questions.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. We had a workshop at one stage where we had, actually, I think it was a library, and we had one of our consultants come in and say, don't have your say on the document in future. So I don't know whether you want to make a change to that. It was just like, that seems to be a stock standard response. So I thought I'd just raise that as maybe do you want to change that to something else, or do we want to hear from you, or we want to hear from you, or something? But that was just something that came out of a previous meeting.
Before you go on, Councillor Noonan, can we just address that? So just one thing at a time on Zoom makes it a bit easier for me. So that one, is that able to be changed, Lisa? Is that?
Sure.
Yeah, I think I really do think that's a good thing, and I've missed feeding that, sending that message through to you. Apologies for that. I don't think I got that in the email. But yeah, I think that's a really valid. I think it's a really valid observation that actually the commentary around that was quite warranted. So is everyone happy with that? That most of you were at that meeting? Yeah, that briefing. Yeah. Okay, I'm getting nods. Okay, moving on.
Sorry, just to be clear, what do you want it changed to? I wasn't at the workshop. I'm not sure what the concerns were that were raised, but I'm happy to change it to another phrase.
Am I still on? I think she was commenting maybe we'd like to hear your views or something, just to change, but maybe Matt might have some answer. It's the marketing person.
I think we've got the minor amendments clause, so we'll use the minor amendments clause and deal with it outside the meeting. We'll keep on going now.
Okay, thanks. So if anybody's got any wonderful ideas, they can email them to you, maybe.
Get on with we'll just keep going with the questions, Councillor Noonan.
So my other question is really regarding the comment that Lisa mentioned, that hard copy is going to be a challenge, and I acknowledge that. I'm just wondering, a lot of the feedback I've had from people is that it is very difficult, that they want hard copy. And I'm just wondering, as a potential solution, maybe, is there a possibility of having just a Word doc, take all the photos out and have something that they can print at home potentially? Just some thinking around that. That's a common issue. And that's all.
I'm not sure. The document is printable with the graphics in or without. Is there a need to remove the graphics for it to be printable?
It's just easier for people to print just Word. I mean, that's all they want. They don't particularly need pictures. Is the feedback? They just want to know what the proposal is. Whether there's a shortened version with pictures out, I don't know. Where you could print them at home if you really wanted to have a hard copy. I'll leave that with you to have a think about, but just that I just want to pass on the concern that I've heard in the past of people wanting to access things. They usually go into council. They can't do that, obviously, and maybe just the important parts of the document that they want to pick up. I'll leave that. I'm just passing a message.
Councillor Bywater.
Thank you. Councillor Noonan has covered off a couple of mine. There was just one more. In the Mayor's report, we had the government policy statement on housing and urban development, and there was the indication that if that was to actually have a report through, that there would be a loss of time around this, and this would obviously impact on what we're discussing now. I'm just wondering if the that policy statement on housing, is that actually going to have, is that going to be part of this? Is it going to be that lens of what's in that document put across this housing development, with the expectation that what's in that statement, that document will actually be used to let's lens over it, that would be used as a guiding document on how this housing will actually be not allocated, but how the awareness of the people that are in this development will actually be catered for. Does that make sense, Lisa?
Through the Mayor, the GPS on urban development is not about allocating people into social and affordable housing. It's about the government's direction for housing overall.
Okay, but it will actually be taken into consideration as part of the process with this?
Through the Mayor, I imagine the council and the deliberations report could comment on whether or not this proposal is within keeping of the GPS when we get to that point.
Okay, that's cool. So we'll get to that point. And the other one, there has actually been a lot of commentary around many different aspects of what this development may mean and impact to people around the area. So we'll expect that the public feedback will bring that back and tell us what they are thinking. So, and then I just wonder about that time schedule that we have now, given that we've got COVID, and if that's going to be, are we confident that we have enough opportunity for people to actually feedback, which is what Councillor Noonan, so just following up on what she said. So it's just that there are a few things that are coming out of that 4.7 on page 63, the community engagement, and it's only to run for 4 weeks. So are we?
Yes. So through the Mayor, we're in that same unfortunate circumstance as we were last year when we did the engagement on Streets for People, when we had 700 or 800 responses, so nearly more than the annual plan, like a really good consultation response rate from that process, and that was undertaken during various levels of COVID lockdown. So I'm keen to keep the proposed consultation dates.
Okay. And one more thing through the chair. We've everyone has touched on, and it's been discussed also too with the last topic that we had about car parking. Now, we signed out last year in December legislation that's coming through at the end of this year saying that car parking is no longer a necessity or an expectation of developers. So in the situation of this, we haven't seen the plan. We've got no idea of what's going to be coming through, but there's no necessary need of the developer to actually put car parking on their site. Is that correct?
Through the Mayor, yes, that's correct, but that was correct before the government direction through the NPSUD. We haven't since 1996 in the Nelson Resource Management Plan required any car parking for development in the city centre.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next questions, Councillor Skinner.
Thank you for that. Just to reiterate, I thought Councillor Bowater made a good point in regards to if we're, or the public are considering the offer on the table from Kaianga Ora in regards to their mindset, agenda, or what they're trying to achieve with their government or GPS, their government policy statement on housing and urban development. So, I mean, if there is some sort of link or coverage of what their angle of approach is, what they're trying to achieve, I think it would reflect well, especially if we're weighing up between partnering with Kaianga Ora on this or going out to the market in general as the feedback from the public, whichever feedback we get. They want to weigh up private versus Kaianga Ora agenda or mindset.
Yes, so through the Mayor, I'll have a look at the GPS UD and the feedback that we get and see if I can provide some commentary in the deliberations report.
Yeah, or even something so public aware of it. I know, like with the with this topic, when I was going through it, and then I see there was a link, for example, which was helpful. a link on our document, and I was able to read then the government policy statement, and it gave me a little bit of insight into how and what and why they're trying to achieve what they're trying to achieve, and if that's something that sits with our values as Nelson or not. And the public will need to know that. The other one was thank you for I know we've the difficult situation here and approaching those tenants that we have already with one of these buildings at least. What was, I read what I read in the paper, but what was the response from our tenants? It might be through for the mayor or the Pat on that.
I think that's Mr. Bellini.
Yes, so through the mayor, the response was varied. Some tenants responded, "Oh, that's good. Something really needs to happen with this building that I'm in."
Yep.
Other tenants were more uncertain and expressed some concerns and their opinions for what council should be doing with that property. Officers, we all encourage them to participate in the feedback process, and so I'm sure that council, they will make their views aware, and council will be able to consider that in their deliberations.
And just and thank you through Chairman Mayor, and thank you, Lisa. In regards to this, obviously going out to the public will come back to us what their thoughts are on it. Where to from then? Say if the public say, well, we like the idea, but we'd rather it go out to private tender and see what's on the table, including Kaingora, so it's sort of more open feedback on what's could be achieved. Where do we go from there? So if we say, okay, thank you, Kaingora, but we've had a loud, strong approach from public, say, hey, actually, we'd like it to go out to a broader public tender. Where would we go there? Would we then take it off the table because it doesn't fit with what was originally proposed to us, which I understand, or do we then go, okay, we will now go out to sell these properties or divest, as we seem to be using it in the document, but sell these assets? Do we then go back out to public tender? For example, those tenants, as you may aware, one of the tenants was quite keen for a while to purchase one of the buildings direct themselves. Would we then go out to offers in general?
So
would it be withdrawn?
that would be for the council to decide once you've considered that feedback, and you'd want to consider that feedback in conjunction with the outcomes that the council wants to achieve in terms of housing, whether or not you want to achieve social and affordable housing or market housing.
Yep, or commercial, or all those assets going out for either housing or commercial investment.
That's correct. Council would need to decide on what is priority to those sites, and then that would determine the process from there on.
So and think of that, and with your tolerance there, Madam Mayor, last question. Does that mean that we are further considering of selling off these assets, or we've really been reacting to an offer put on the table? This is probably for the public's understanding. Is this where we are today? If we hadn't had this offer by Kaingora, would we also be considering going out to sell these, or would we intend to hang on to these assets?
So, through the Mayor, Council consulted on the long-term plan on looking at our property portfolio and seeing if you have any properties that we could utilise to leverage housing supply. So that's an active process that officers are going through. So the fact that this expression of interest came along at this time has prompted these properties to come before council for consideration. But I think that the general direction from the Property Development Subcommittee is that we don't want to have council properties lying around underutilised when we.
Okay, no, thank you for the answers. Very helpful. Appreciate your diligence on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, just a quick question, just following on from that. Lisa, I'm just wondering, are you aware of any other sort of serious inquiry that would deliver something of the scale that Kaingora are offering to council?
Through the Mayor, anywhere in the district, is that already is the question?
Well, yeah, basically within the city.
Through the Mayor, we've had approaches from a number of developers and for both council sites and in relation to other privately owned sites for housing developments. There's a lot of interest in providing housing in the city centre, but none for social and affordable housing that I'm aware of to date.
And at the scale that we're talking about here?
None for social and affordable at the scale, but certainly other market housing at scale.
Yep, okay, thank you. Good.
Councillor Laurie.
Thank you. Just something else that has been raised with me by some members of the public is the issue of height in that part of town. Could officers just remind us of what the story is in terms of how big things can be?
Yeah, so through the Mayor, currently the maximum height limit in the Nelson Resource Management Plan is 15 metres. Obviously, anyone can apply for a resource consent to put forward a proposal that is breaches the height limit, so long as they can show that the effects are no more than minor. And we've got a few examples of that around the city centre. The Quest building is one that comes to mind. The Nelson plan is obviously to give effect to council's priorities on housing affordability and intensification and housing supply in general, is proposing a higher height limit of 24 metres. And generally, obviously, the direction from the government and the National Policy Statement UD for Tier 1 councils is that they can no longer control height. So I think the climate that we are operating in is generally accepting that in order to provide housing supply, we need to intensify, and that involves increasing height, certainly from what's in the Nelson Resource Management Plan rules, which were developed in the late 90s.
Thank you for that. Through the chair, just one more question of clarification. In order for us to have two developments that provide this number of homes, how high will it need to be, roughly? They need to be.
Through the Mayor, it's a little bit difficult to say because we haven't had done any design work yet. But the public feedback document and Climate Order's design statement in there indicates that they would like to consider up to 8 stories at one part of one of the sites. I think it is safe to say that any concepts that we might see in the future, should council decide to sell, would include 5 to 6 stories and up to 8 stories in a portion of the site.
Thank you very much. Sounds good.
All right, so we're ready to move into debate. I'll go to Councillor Ika.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, for me, this proposal makes sense on so many levels. Kāinga Ora are uniquely placed to provide the scale of social and affordable housing that we require, bring intensification to our city, and provide much needed housing. I'd like to thank Lisa for all the work she's done on bringing this proposal forward for our consideration today, and also everyone involved in the sale, including the Mayor and elected members who were critical in developing the relationship that we have with Kāinga Ora. Because first and foremost, this is being based on those relationships and Kāinga Ora identifying the need that our community have. And because like us, housing is a priority, not just of this council, but it's a priority of the community. And this is a significant opportunity. And I think the aligned timing of feedback is also a really great opportunity to show how this supports and ties in with Te Ara Whakatū vision, and of course it supports many of our other council priorities as well. Look, as we know, stable and secure housing is a key determinant of social, educational and health outcomes. And so for me, this is that critical thing, is this is about achieving affordable housing supply, not just about housing supply, but that missing middle affordable housing supply. And if councillors remember, Dr. Kay Saville-Smith, the Chief Science Advisor to MHUD, presented to the Urban Development Subcommittee last year and spoke about the need to address housing for that missing middle. And these are people that are, with relatively secure, low to middle income jobs, who struggle to access and afford secure housing, whether that's rental or ownership. And all you need is something as simple as employment disruption, and they can very quickly fall down and end up requiring social housing. And so her advice for us identified that as a critical gap in Nelson's housing supply. The market delivers very well for market housing, but this is our opportunity to support that affordable housing supply. And we wouldn't get that or those design outcomes if we went to the open market. So yeah, look, I just think this is a fantastic proposal. We did, of course, discuss this in the LTP with our community, and both having that, looking at what are the assets we own, and if they're underutilized or not being used for their purpose, why do we still have them? If they're not there for the purpose we bought them, then we should look at divesting them or using them for better purposes. And this is a win-win because it also would help achieve that council priority, community priority of housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ega. Councillor Rainey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I certainly would like to endorse and support what Councillor Edgar has just said. This is one of the key issues that we highlighted as one that we wanted to tackle as a council this term, that of trying to do something about the housing situation in Nelson, and also with a particular focus on social and affordable housing. I think this potential project is like a triple whammy in that if it went ahead, it would reduce the pressure on greenfield development, which I think would be great. It would help to revitalise our CBD, which is something we've all talked about so many times, and it's something that's very dear to my heart to see some action. But also, I think the thing that really gets me excited about this is that we have such a willing partner with Kāinga. And any of us who were sitting around the table, or members of the public who would have had the opportunity, well, not that they would have had the opportunity, to see the enthusiasm expressed by the staff from Kāinga towards the approach and the general feeling that they were getting from the elected members around this table, is something I think that's very special. And I haven't seen that kind of response from a government agency towards something that council has been engaged in for a long time. So we did, as I said, we have a willing partner, and not only that, are they a willing partner in regards to wanting to look at putting housing into our CBD, but they are willing partners in wanting to put in social housing and affordable housing in our CBD. And that, I think, sets this apart. I'm very keen to get this out into the public arena to see what people say about this. And I certainly welcome this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to hearing what kind of feedback we're going to get. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Rainey. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you very much to all the elected representatives and staff who have worked to get us to this point. In my opinion, this is absolutely potentially a game changer for Nelson. We've seen some excellent progress on central city living at the expensive end of the market, but this really is the first thing that we've seen at the affordable end. Yes, it's change, but it's really good change for Nelson. And it's going to give us a chance to really push the city forward in terms of our strategic goals and, quite frankly, our economic goals as well. And look, I think if it happens, and I really hope it does happen, I think we'll see more of these developments, not just Kāinga developments, but also ones put up by the private sector for this part of the market. Nelson Whakatū is a smart little city. And as a city, we have to play to our strengths. My family and I, we're townies, you know, we're not really big into tramping and that kind of thing. We like living in a town with cafes and restaurants and galleries and movies and all the good stuff that cities have to offer. And what we have in Nelson is all of that sort of thing. But what we don't have is people living in town, and it's really the missing link for our city. What I particularly love about this proposal is it will mean families, if it goes ahead, it will mean families living in town. It'll mean kids hanging out in town, and I think that'll be really good for the city as well. I just really hope people get behind it. It is change, but the benefits massively outweigh the disadvantages, and I hope people give us lots of really great feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Laurie. Councillor O'Neill-Stevens.
A lot of what I would say has already been said, so I just want to hone in on the fact that for me, this proposal is massively exciting because what makes our cities isn't the buildings in them, it's not how tall or how short or what they look like that really matters. It's the people that inhabit our cities that create the vibrancy and culture, as Matt talked about. And any opportunity that we have in a very serious housing crisis to help get more people not just into housing, but into housing in a great location, surrounded by services and amenities, is an opportunity we have to really seriously consider, and I think, and really jump on by bringing, especially at that lower end of housing, and by bringing more people into the city, everyone wins. You get safer urban environment, you get longer trading hours, you get more successful business. And so I really look forward to the feedback we get, but I think that is something really core that we need to keep at the heart of these discussions, that ultimately at the end of the day, we're talking about people, and that people who need to be homed or are currently for a lot of them in unstable housing, and or just paying massive amounts of rent and substandard housing. So in front of us is an opportunity for a large number of people change that. I'm really, really excited by it. So thank you to Lisa and the whole team and everyone at Kāinga Ora. Hopefully we'll be able to progress this quickly.
Thanks, Councillor O'Neill-Stevens. Councillor Fulton.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. Look, I'm going to echo what other councillors have already said. I just think this is a tremendous opportunity. It's something we've all been waiting a long time for. We set out housing as a priority for this term of council, but it's been a priority for a number of terms, particularly housing affordability. And what really excites me about this document is it's thought about housing sustainability as well. And everywhere I look, it's echoed that we can do affordable and sustainable housing at the same time. I really, really like the design outcomes. They are well thought out, they're well articulated, they cover everything that we should be thinking about when we're thinking about how we build houses for the future. The design statement goes into a little bit more detail about that, and I just think that Kāinga Ora's presentations to us really affirmed their commitment to carbon neutral future, and that they are in the business of building highly sustainable homes which look great, are attractive and fit into our urban environment in a really, really positive way. So for me, this is just ticking so many boxes. It's hugely exciting to have this opportunity come to Nelson, and I really think that bringing people into our CBD is a key to the future for Nelson City. So I'm looking forward to it progressing and hearing from the community.
Thank you, Councillor Fulton. Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and everyone has said everything needs to be said and said it so well. But I'm going to say, quite frankly, I'm delighted that Kāinga Ora has accepted our advice that we have an urgent problem here in Nelson with challenge, I should say, not problem, challenge in Nelson, and they are prepared to partner us, as others have said. But look, what I'm particularly pleased about in my role as a councillor and also as a councillor, just about, on matters of housing and so forth, and always have been, is the social housing aspect of this. Now, we mustn't shy away from this. This is significant. And it's something that Nelson needs, and we mustn't diminish the need for the social housing. Now, there'll be children, there'll be families in here, in these houses that'll be shared in some of these buildings that have had circumstances in their lives, might not be skilled in a certain area of acquiring a house, all sorts of very valid reasons for seeking social housing, but they are still people. As Councillor O'Neill Stevens referred to, they are still people who can contribute to our city, who will find value in having a home, a social house in the centre of the city. Their children will grow up proud and contribute as well. So this to me is very important, and I don't want anyone in this community of ours to in any way diminish the value of social housing in this community, the value to the individual or family and also to the city. So I'm certainly very happy to be a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Courtney. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you. Not a lot to add. There's been a lot said. I do think it won't be straightforward. Nothing ever is, and there will be some challenges, but we'll work through those. One of those is the minimal car parking, and I think we've heard a lot about that, but we'll let the public come back and tell us what they think we should do and how we should do it. The reason why I wanted to speak was really clause 6, which is how we're going to consult, and I'm going to be relying on that resolution that will take sufficient steps to consult. And I know we've got one of the challenges straight up is to actually be able to consult in a meaningful way, given that we've got COVID, because that just adds layers and layers of difficulty. So if there's anything that we can do to assist that, then that's what we're there for, and we are the conduit to the public. So I guess the challenge I'm laying bare that might be up to us to help with that, getting that out to the people that talk to us and how we do that. So that was really the main reason why I wanted to speak. I will support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noonan. Councillor Bywater.
Thank you. To be perfectly honest, Councillor Noonan just covered off everything I was going to say, so I will just wait for the vote. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to speak to this one on a couple of areas. When I came to the previous council to talk about our community housing and how we were going to resolve the challenge that we had with community housing, I said we were going to try something, outside the square. We were going to go and do something a bit different. And I was going to go and have a conversation with the government about finding a solution. And Nikki MacDonald and I went to Wellington to talk to, the first thing we did is we picked up the phone and rang, and then the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development within a week came to us, because we said we need to work together on this. That relationship evolved to with the Ministry for Housing and Urban Development, with Kāinga Ora, and initially with Minister Twyford and then with Minister Wood. And I have to say that when we think about the big issues that we have to face as a community and as a country, housing is one of them. There are so many people, not only in our community, but throughout New Zealand, who don't have a home or a safe home or a warm home or housing security. And these big issues are going to require partnerships. They require everyone working together. They require actually the political gumboots to come off on the veranda, and all political parties and all levels of government sit down around the table together and work together. And I think this project, as I look at it, or opportunity for this project, represents those principles, that opportunity, and that collective responsibility to address a significant issue. Similarly, you'll see that approach, and we need that approach when it comes to addressing infrastructure. And as part of this proposal, we have also said, all right, what else can we do to bring good opportunities to Nelson? And so we looked at the Accelerated Infrastructure Fund that the government had brought forward and announced, and of course $1 billion worth of infrastructure to come in to support housing development. And so we as a council decided that this was a project that actually could be advanced and supported by applying to that fund. And as you know, we worked together to put forward a proposal into the infrastructure fund, and now we're at this point of bringing this proposal together. We did that in our confidential business a fortnight ago because we were negotiating that point of whether this proposal would come forward or the opportunity for it. So what we've done is again taken a all partners together approach to address big issues, whether that is housing, whether that is supplying the infrastructure that is needed to develop housing. We're taking a very joined up approach, and I think that's a positive thing. If I reflect back on those first conversations, when I came back to say to you that I thought there was a real opportunity here for Kāinga Ora, or on that stage Housing New Zealand, to work with us and our community housing, I got quite a pushback from many elected members, and we got quite a pushback from many in the community. And those of you who were there through those consultation processes will remember that. There was a lot of apprehension, a lot of learnt experiences or previous experiences that meant people had views about working with the government when it came to housing. And I think through the steps that we took with the divestment of the community housing, we have proven that actually that is a successful partnership. And so on multiple levels, we are operating in a way that can start to address some of these really, really big issues. The issues that are barriers to people fully participating in society, and barriers to us having what I consider to be the kind of Kiwi way of living, where everyone actually has a chance, no matter which side of the tracks they came from or have come from. So I'm just really pleased to see this coming up today. I want to say to you, one of the things I really like about Kāinga Ora's approach is they're Kāinga Ora homes and community. And the team at Kāinga Ora have absolutely approached that with us in terms of the relationship. We are a council that has a relationship agreement with Kāinga Ora. That is an important thing. When I went up to Auckland to speak at the Affordable Housing and Investment Summit 2 weeks ago, I had council staff and elected members really interested in what we had been doing in building this relationship, and several of them and several of the other Kāinga Ora teams were very keen to come to Nelson to actually see what we're doing. So I think as a council you can feel confident that you're leading out on all of the opportunities that are there. I hope our infrastructure fund application, if we decide at the end of this process where we're getting feedback from the community that we do wish to proceed with the sale of land, one or both parcels to Kāinga Ora, and they go through their due diligence, because there's lots of steps to go here. We get through those steps and decide to proceed, both parties. Then I also hope that the panel that is reviewing the Accelerated Infrastructure Fund applications looks positively on our application, which was an application to upgrade our ring road water mains, our wastewater network, to look at providing funding for the linear park and the active transport corridor that we've been talking about in the proposal for Te Aro o Whakatū. All of those investments actually then create the foundation for private sector investment and set our city in a very good direction for the future. So let's hope we can get through these steps and get support from the community for the housing developments we're talking about here, and also support for the spatial plan, because this is when a lot of the work that we've been doing starts to come together. And it's a pretty important day today as all of those proposals are released. But one of the things we've committed to as a council is actually seeking feedback from our community, and that is important. So thank you to all of the teams that have worked on this project and the proposal. It's a real opportunity for us as a city, and I think it just sits very, very nicely with the priorities we've set as elected members and the work that has been now going on for well over a year to start to bring the building blocks together. So Pat, I just want to thank you and all of your staff, because this is led up by the city development team, this particular project, but actually it requires a lot of parts of council to come together to bring these reports and opportunities to us. So thank you to all the staff team. I'll hand back to Deputy Mayor to see if she wants to write a reply.
Yeah, just briefly, thank you everyone for your comments. Yeah, I just think we need to be really clear about what it is we're seeking feedback on from the community. We're seeking their feedback on the proposal to sell the 2 sites and/or either or both of the 2 sites to Kāinga Ora to leverage social and affordable housing. You know, we're not asking their feedback on design, on height, on number of car parks should be provided, etc., etc. And I know it can be hard for the community when they can't see the specifics. If we went to the market, the same would apply, and in fact we wouldn't necessarily have those design outcomes. But I think the key for being clear is because the community can get frustrated if they provide feedback on things and we're not seen to take them into account. So we need to be clear that this is what we're seeking feedback on, is the sale of those sites and not those other elements. But yeah, thank you everyone for supporting this proposal to go out for feedback, and thank you everyone who has helped to get us to this position where we are today.
Thank you. I'm ready to put the motion. All those in favour, please indicate your support the way you wish. All right, thank you very much. That's I think got full support to go out. Thank you. I will put anyone against? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour, against, or carried. It's carried. It's carried. It's done. Carried. All right, and is there any other business left on the agenda? Have we covered everything off? I see we haven't quite managed 2.5 hours. We had a couple of breaks, so we'll take a deduction for those slightly over time. I think that's pretty much everything today. I just check in with Elaine. Is there anything further you need from us before we go to closing karakia?
No, you've covered everything. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Elaine. Thank you, Robin, for all your support behind the scenes there. I think we've done okay. I think I'll give us an 8 out of 10 for today. I'll try and fix up a little technical things that I've missed today that you can't see behind the scenes. Handing over to Councillor Rainey, and who's going to close for us today.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The loose translation of this he karakia whakakapi is restrictions are moved aside so the pathway is clear to return to everyday activities, which I thought was kind of appropriate. Kia whakairia te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia turuki whakatahi ai, kia turuki whakatahi ai, homie hui taiki e.
Kia ora, thank you all for joining the meeting today, and look forward to getting those proposals out to the community. Have a wonderful afternoon.